Ready? Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the City Council for December 6, 2010 to order. First thing, as always, is roll call determination of a quorum. Charlene, if you would, please.
Peterson. Weifenbach. Davis. Hadcock. Kroger. Costello. Quaker.
Here.
Waugh. Brown. Mason. We have quorum.
Very good. Just a couple of reminders. First of all, if you have a cell phone or a pager, we would ask that you put that into the silent mode or turn it off. If you do need to take a phone call while you're in here, what we do is ask you to actually exit the room and go out in the hallway so you don't disturb the proceedings. We certainly appreciate that. We also have speaker request forms. They look like this. They're to your left, to our right. If you would please fill those out if you wish to speak to any item on the agenda or during the general public comment period. Just also a reminder, we do have a 3-minute rule as far as public comment. You'll see lights up here, and we'll just remind you of that as you come up. With that, next thing, as always, is our invocation, and I would ask everyone to please rise as Roy Roberts, the principal of Rapid City Christian School, gives us our invocation, and then please remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's bow our heads in word of prayer. Father, we just want to come before you tonight. We pray for your guidance for each and every one of these individuals. We pray that you will grant them wisdom and insight, Father. We pray that they would have a peace within their heart in every decision that they make. And Father, we just pray that everything that takes place here tonight would bring honor and glory to your name. We just ask these things in your precious name, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Certainly appreciate it. Next thing on the agenda, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any items that needed to be added to tonight's agenda? If so, please turn on your light. Any items we need to add to the agenda? Going once, going twice. If not, Chair will look for a motion to approve the agenda as published. We have a second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to the approval of the minutes. We're looking for approval of the November 8th, 2010, and the November 22nd special council meeting and the November 15th regular council meeting. We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We are on to awards and recognitions. Mike, you want to come down and join me? You know, it's times like this where we really appreciate our city employees, and tonight we just want to acknowledge Mike Thompson. He's been with us a little over 20 years, and I've known Mike for a long time. Matter of fact, what's really impressed me about Mike is the fact that he has the ability to step up the plate and really get a job done. And the reason I say that is when I first got on city council, the city was faced with a situation of where we had to take over the ambulance service, and we were given about 30 days' notice. The ambulance service that was providing service for everyone in our community decided to pull out, gave us 30 days' notice, and Mike basically took on the challenge. And I don't know how many people realize this, but the City of Rapid City provides not only the ambulance service for the City of Rapid City, but for the vast majority of the areas around us, including most of Pennington County, down into Custer County, up into Piedmont Valley. And quite honestly, it's through Mike's leadership that we have been able to create an enterprise fund that is self-sufficient and quite honestly is the envy of just about any ambulance service in the country. With that, I'm going to have the chief here say a few words about Mike, and then we'll let Mike have a chance at the mic. I will tell you, we're going to miss him. He's retiring. He's moving on to bigger and better things. Unfortunately, he's going to leave our community, but I know that Rapid City will always be his home and his heart. Chief.
And thanks for everyone for giving us an opportunity to recognize Mike tonight. As the mayor said, Mike's done a ton of good work for us in the fire department, and obviously I enjoy working with him. Not only does he do a good job for the fire department internally, but through his work in the last 7 years, we're able to provide a very, very important service to both Rapid City and as the mayor said, all of Pennington County and even a little bit of our neighboring counties. And through his leadership, we do provide an excellent service. The level of quality is second to none for ambulance services of our size. And with that, it provides us a lot of opportunities for us to be a better department for Rapid City. So I'm going to miss Mike. He's been a near and dear friend of mine. We started on the job the same year, crawled down a few smoky hallways together, and protected each other. So there'll be a friendship that I guess is moving on to another chapter today. So we are excited to celebrate with him his retirement. He's moving on to another job where he's going to continue to provide a certain level of service in the terms of dispatch and medical services to Salt Lake City. And we did actually make a promotion. Jason Culberson's with us today. He's going to be taking over the EMS component of the fire department, and we're excited about basically what that change means for us and the opportunity to grow and take our EMS to another level. So with that, tonight's about Mike, and I'll present him with this award for his 20 years plus of service with the City of Rapid City.
Thank you. I don't really have anything profound to say. What the mayor didn't say is I also bought furniture from him quite some years ago, so I've known the mayor for quite a while. I have every anticipation that the framework that we've put in place over the last several years will continue under Jason Culberson's leadership and the fine work that the fire department does in general. We had some very significant obstacles to overcome when we first put the service in place, but I totally agree with these two gentlemen. It's one of the finer services in the country, and everybody that lives in this community and in the area surrounding this community should be proud of the service that the men and women in the Rapid City Fire Department do provide. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Always recognize. Thank you. I'd also like to invite Brendan up, and Dave and Kim and the rest of the family, if you could please come up also. Come on up, you guys. Well, if you didn't happen to read about it in the paper, we have the honor to recognize a true American hero. Yesterday, if you notice, I don't know if you can see it or not, he received his Purple Heart. It was quite the honor yesterday, and it was a packed house at the DAV, so we're very proud of Brendan. Let me read this if I can, Brendan. This is an executive proclamation. It reads, whereas it is right and proper that we recognize certain individuals, and whereas Brendan Steckenwalt, upon his graduation from Stevens High School in 2006, entered the United States Army, where he was trained as a combat engineer with a designation of 21 Bravo. And whereas he was deployed in Iraq in February of 2009 to the, put my glasses on, with the 4th Engineering Battalion of Fort Carson, Colorado, and in May of 2009 was sent to Afghanistan, where he was wounded when his armored vehicle was blown up on September 29, 2009, causing severe injuries, including many fractures requiring hospitalization and surgeries, both in Germany and also in Washington, D.C. at the Walter Reed Army Medical Hospital. And whereas Army Chief of Staff General George Casey awarded him the Purple Heart, and whereas, although many doctors initially thought Brendan would not be able to walk again, he grew stronger with physical therapy at the Minneapolis Veterans Affairs Medical Center, and whereas he underwent rehabilitation services at Fort Leonard Wood to help him transition back to civilian life, And whereas Brendan is pleased to be back in Rapid City with his mother, Kimberly, his father, David, his sister, Savannah, Kendra, and Tasha, and whereas Brendan exemplifies the patriotism, dedication, and tenacity that makes the United States Army soldier great. Now, therefore, I, Alan Hanks, the mayor of the city of Rapid City, do hereby proclaim December 6, 2010 as Brendan Steckenwalt Day. Brendan, thank you for your service. And that's true. He always says I'm not very good at speeches, but let me just tell you a little bit about the things I've learned about Brendan. He is probably one of the most courageous people I've ever met. When he was injured, I've seen the pictures of him when he was in the hospital, in the halos and everything else, and when everybody told him that he wasn't going to walk again, he was determined. And if you look at him today, what an incredible, really an incredible accomplishment is. He's back, he's with us, and as you can see, I won't say that he's made a full recovery because, quite honestly, when a soldier has the magnitude of injuries, they'll accompany him the rest of his life. But look at him. I mean, a proud soldier. We couldn't be more proud of Brendan. Congratulations. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations to those that were honored tonight. Next thing on our agenda is the general public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at tonight's meeting on the issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by the unanimous vote of the council members present. We do have one speaker request form for the general public comment period. Please keep in mind we do time this, and it's Mike Quansney. Mike, I hope I got your last name close.
Pretty good.
Very good. If you would please come forward, Mike, and if you'd identify yourself for the record, and then the floor will be yours, sir.
Okay, my name is Mike Quasney. I address you as a citizen of Rapid City and a member of the Mount Rushmore Road Group. I would like to thank Mayor Hanks, council members, and the Parks Department for their support of our second annual Wilson Park lighting ceremony. It was a little cold, but it was a great success. The Mount Rushmore Road Group would also like to take this opportunity to make sure you know how excited we are for the upcoming rebuilding of Mount Rushmore Road and all the opportunities it presents to make our road the entrance it should be to our great city of Rapid City, both from the north and the south. This road is the entrance to all of downtown improvements that are taking place, as well as the road to one of our nation's greatest treasures, Mount Rushmore. Yes, there is much to do, and we look forward to being a part of that end result, a road that we all can be proud of, and quite possibly only the beginning of what it can be. I'd like to thank you for all you're doing on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. We also have a speaker request form for the general public comment period from Ron Sasso. Again, Mr. Sasso, if you please identify yourself for the record, then the floor is yours.
Ron Sasso, 219 San Marco Boulevard. I just wanted to, first and foremost, praise Rapid City for basically on how they went about handling Spencer's. And I was, I think, very pleased with the outcome, as I think there are a lot of people who were. There are some people who probably weren't as happy with that. And I know it's a very, sometimes touchy subject. But one of the reasons that I came here is also Shotgun Willie's. They have a yellow party bus, a school bus yellow party bus. Labeled, they have that parked out there. South Dakota Codified Law 32-32 4 indicates that the use of color for other vehicles prohibited, repainting of buses formerly used as school buses is a violation, as a petty offense, and that no persons, or organizations may use the color reserved for school buses as provided in 32-32.3. Anyway, it's something that I believe in much the same way as, cigarette manufacturers were known to try to entice children to start smoking. I believe it falls under the same category. So that would be something that I would encourage the city to take a look at and move forward on in trying to make some changes so that doesn't happen. So, and there again, it's not a witch hunt or anything like that, but I just think that that's something that would be worth looking into. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sasso. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Are there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak to the general public comment period? I do not have any additional speaker request forms. Anyone else? If not, we will move on. We're on to the non-public hearing items. These are items 1 through 93 inclusive. Chair will look for a motion to open the public comment period on 1 through 76 inclusive. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. I do have a couple speaker request forms. Let's see, where's Mr. Dahl? You wanted to just wait and see if there's any questions? Okay, very good. We also have a speaker request form from Kent Brown on item number 53. Item number 53, Mr. Brown.
Also the same thing.
Okay.
If there's any questions, I'm here to answer.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you. And that would be all the speaker request forms on items 1 through 76. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to any item 1 through 76 inclusive? If not, the chair will look for a motion to close the public comment period. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We are under the consent calendar. These are items 1 through 67 inclusive. 1 through 67 inclusive. Chair would ask if any of the items need to be pulled from the consent calendar, from staff or from the City Council. If so, please turn on your light. Any items, please. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I think 17 and 49.
17 and 49. Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker. Item 56. Any other items? Right now we're dealing with the consent calendar, items 1 through 67 inclusive, with the exception of items 17, 49, and 56. And the chair will look for a motion. We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent calendar, items 1 through 67 inclusive, with the exception of items 17, 49, and 56. Any discussion on those motions? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We are on to item number 17. That's under Public Works items, and we'll go to Alderman Sam Quaker, who chairs our Public Works Committee. Alderman Quaker. If you first read that in, and then if you'd like to have the floor, you can.
Item 17 is to approve placement of the items listed from the September 27, 2010 budget hearing on the next budget hearing agenda. For the sake of discussion, I'll move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Quaker. Do you have any comments? Okay. Further discussion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I happened to be gone at that last November meeting, but when I came back, I was surprised to learn that there was no agenda for this particular meeting, even though we had lengthy discussions during the budget process about starting the process early, looking at where we sit now, where we're going to be in the future, just taking a responsible look at this budget item. And I just want to know, now that we're putting it on here again, if we have someone actually that is going to make sure that gets done, who would be, I mean, do we have to direct someone specifically to make sure that we have this ready when we move forward with our next budget hearing, so we're not a little bit dazed and confused when this comes up again? Because there was several items that we talked about at budget time that we said we would look forward to being ahead of the curveball this time and not being accused of waiting until the last minute, just trying to be responsible.
I think the answer is the fact that if you have anything that should, any addition, if you get to council leadership, keep in mind these are city council meetings, these are not special council meetings. So this is actually a committee of the whole of the council. So anything that you'd like, I would recommend that you go through council leadership and make sure that it is placed on the agenda.
I understand that, Mr. Mayor, but the last meeting we had, there was no agenda, even though we requested an agenda to be present at that point in time. And when we came to the meeting, the items that we had requested from the December 27th budget hearings, there was nothing there. I just want to make sure that we don't face that same dilemma again, that we come prepared and ready to talk about these things and move forward. So when next year, when the budget comes along, we've had these talks and considerations. So I'm not sure. I guess I'm just looking for someone who's going to be held accountable for having this on the agenda or not on the agenda. So.
Okay, any further comments? Let's go to Alderwoman.
I'd like to know who that person would be, or if we have to appoint
I think,
someone.
Ron, I already answered council leadership. If you work through council leadership, they will work with staff to make sure that the agendas are put together.
All right. I think we were told that last time, so.
Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'll let Ron Kroger talk, and then I'll talk after him, if that's
very
okay.
good.
Yield the floor.
Let's go to Council President Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. To answer Mr. Weifenbach's question, we do have a list. Charlene has a list. I can't go in and tell you what's on the agenda today because it's in my email, but if you want to hold someone responsible that it's going to be on there, that's me.
Okay. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I guess I was wondering the same thing, and maybe Ron, there was a list that was on there that they were going to discuss that we had put, remember, from the budget hearing, and it wasn't discussed. And I was wondering, at this point, are we talking about the next budget hearing that we're going to have all these things that were put forth before on the list now? Sorry, I think I'm asking Ron Kroger if that's okay, Mayor.
Yep. Let's go to Alderman Kroger.
We do have a list that was compiled at our last budget hearing meeting. I don't know what all those items were, but those have been noted and they will be published. And as we did previously to the last budget hearing meeting, was an email will be sent out and asking if any of the council members have anything to put on that agenda.
Okay, I appreciate that. I also was gone at that budget hearing meeting, and hopefully can be at the next one. I'd like to be at that meeting to discuss some of the things that we had discussed on previous, and I guess I thought I had brought those questions forward and they were going to be talked about, but hopefully next budget hearing we can move forward on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I brought this up during Public Works is I also had the mutual concern of making sure that these items were brought forth because, as mentioned previously, it was listed out on September 27th during the budget hearing. The only thing that I guess I would like to add in addition to what's already been said is that if there is an email sent out, I guess I would also request that that email would be sent out before the agenda is actually published. And like the last budget hearing meeting, I guess I would like a little heads up before it's already solidified. And I'll leave with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you. I would like to make sure that we add to that agenda discussion of the possible $767,000 budget deficit that was that was mentioned in the Rapid City Journal about 4 days after we had this budget meeting. So I'm not sure what the process is for adding that, but I would like that to be added to that agenda. So if Council President could add that, I would appreciate it.
Yep.
And I guess I would also like to add that I'm disappointed that at the meeting on the 22nd, we spent so much time discussing what should have been published and when it should have been published instead of discussing the pending $767,000 budget deficit, which I, along with the rest of the council, woke up to read about in the Saturday morning Rapid City Journal. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. On to item 49 in Legal and Finance, we'll go to the chairman, which is Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. Item 49, please.
49 is approved resolution number 2010-171 establishing maximum salaries for certain city officers. And I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to say I'm not sure that a resolution is necessary to achieve this. I think that the council is on board with it, and I think that there may be opportunity here, looking at spreading this across the administration, or even looking for maybe what some of our constituents have encountered, and that's maybe a decrease in wages across the board on the higher echelon people in the city, the managers and up. So, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I also believe that. I think by leading by example, it shouldn't be just city council members and mayors. I think when you have a lot of people in the city that are taking decreases or no increase at all, we ought to lead by example and have that put forth so we don't have increases on people legally, which I hear you have to do. Employees that are union have signed contracts already. Others can be frozen. A lot of companies, obviously the state, are freezing salaries. I think that's an example as well. So I don't know. I'm reading some of this, and it says the current economic conditions limits the city's ability to offer city employee wage increases, which will be 0.75%. Again, I think it should be frozen. If we can freeze salaries and get increases this year because of economic times, that's what I think should be more put on this piece of paper besides just us. I don't mind taking a freeze. I have not taken an increase for a couple years because people were telling me they had their pay and their no increases, so I led by example as well. So I think we could do that. I don't know how we do that, Jason. Do you by chance know if this council wanted to freeze pay at this point, could we?
I'm going to let Jason answer that, but just a reminder to the council, the motion on the floor is for approval of this resolution. We're a little bit off topic, but I'm going to let Jason answer that, and if we can try and bring it back, reel it back in. Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. As indicated, the employees that are subject to union contracts have a pay scale set for them. Typically, what the City Council has done with the non-union employees is mirror those pay scales. You're not required to do that. You could impose a freeze for the non-union employees. That would require additional council action that's different from this item. So you'd probably want to put that on a future agenda.
Okay, I appreciate that because I think what I've been talking to as well is 22 and above. I kind of like to see what that pay is, and I have talked to the mayor about that. And also, at this point, can we change the mayor's salary if we wanted to and decrease his salary at this point on this agenda, or do we have to do it separately?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
This resolution is really aimed at both the mayor and the council, but because it is a resolution, if you wanted to address only the mayor's salary, you could do that with subsequent action, and that's how I would recommend you go about that.
We could do that tonight.
If you'd like to offer a substitute motion, you can certainly do that.
I need to think about that a little bit more. Only the fact that, what is the salary of the mayor? Is it 100,000?
97,000. It's been that way for going on 2 years now.
So in 2009, you didn't take the pay increase, or you did?
In between 2008 and 2009, I did. I froze it in 2010 for the fiscal year 2010. I'm also asking to freeze it for fiscal year 2011.
So you didn't take it in 10 and 11?
That is correct. Didn't take it in 10, and there again, when I say I didn't take it, I approached the city council with almost an identical resolution asking to freeze both my salary and the city council's for 2010, and this resolution would do exactly the same thing. It would freeze my salary and also the city council salaries.
I guess by leading by example, if I was making that, I guess I would be the person setting that forth, and I don't think it's my job to tell you to do that, but I think by leading by example, by taking less in a time where people aren't making $100,000 a year, that makes that difference. I work 30, 40 hours a week. I make about $1,000 a month. Not complaining, obviously. Like I said, I've done it for 2 years. But I think if we're putting resolutions forward, definitely lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, in response to a comment that Deb Hadcock made in regards to this resolution, I guess I do have a question. It's just more for my understanding about how resolutions like this work. But given that in 2009 you mentioned that you took a pay increase, and I'm just wondering, is it my understanding that the council can then vote, and hypothetically, in this instance, I'm very much for it. I think with the economic conditions, we absolutely should not be even looking at a pay increase, but do we have the ability to vote ourselves a pay increase? And I guess I would ask Jason and or the mayor.
The answer is yes. It is only the city council, and when you say the mayor took a pay increase, the city council voted itself and the mayor the same pay increase as far as a percentage. The mayor cannot give himself a raise,
Sure.
just like no city employee can get a raise without the approval of the city council. The mayor does not have the ability to give a raise to anyone outside of the policy that's already been adopted by the city council.
Sorry for the miscommunication there. I guess I just was trying to repeat kind of what you said there. What I guess I'm curious about is it's confusing to me that we even have the ability to have something that takes effect immediately like that, and I guess I'm wondering, and I guess I would direct the question to Jason Green, given that I've been told repeatedly we have rules on the books that if there is any sort of direct pecuniary interest, yay or nay, we should abstain. But in this instance, it's my understanding that we have the ability to vote ourselves up or down or neutral, and yet I'm directly getting possibly direct compensation from that vote, and I guess I would, how do we reconcile those two? I'm
That's a good question. Jason?
Well, it's a matter of reviewing all of the statutes together and making sure that the interpretation that comes out is consistent and gives effect to each of those statutes. The city council as the governing body is the only body that can establish the rates of pay for the city council. So I don't believe that you run afoul of the conflict of interest statute by voting on something that you're specifically authorized to vote on, even though in that particular case there is a pecuniary interest.
Out of curiosity, has it ever been proposed or considered that if we were to do something like that, it wouldn't take effect until the next election cycle? That way, alleviating any sort of direct or inherent direct conflict of interest in the instant. Thereby, there's the possibility that half or all could or could not be voting for them, in their interest.
Let's go to Jason Green, city attorney.
I don't recall any discussion of that concept. I think the difficulty that you run into at the city council is that half the council is up for election every year. It's not like Congress or the legislature, where the House of Representatives, the entire House is up every year, or the entire houses in the state legislature are up for election every year, so you guarantee election. It's a little more complicated.
I appreciate that. Like I said before, and I guess I'll just end in a quick statement to explain why I'm asking about this. I obviously, for the economic conditions, feel very strongly that not only should we not be getting a pay increase at all, but I've also entertained the idea that maybe by leading by example, we should consider the opposite effect. And I realize that is not maybe the most popular thing to say, but I do feel strongly that our city employees are working hard, and to take a leadership role, sometimes that means taking the brunt of what's unfortunate. And I guess not only would I entertain the motion of going in the opposite direction so that we could also consider what city employees could be compensated for their due diligence and hard work, but secondly, the ability of the council to have that control, which to me conceptually is hard not to understand how there isn't an inherent self-interest, a conflict of interest directly built in it, troubles me. And I guess I just want to express that I am morally, I feel conflicted about even having the ability to make a decision like this. And with that, I'll concede. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would certainly be willing to consider freezing pay of supervisors and all.
22 and above.
But I would want to do this and look at what the actual savings are going to be, because everybody in the city works really hard, and to balance it. So I don't. I think if we want to do something like this, we need to do it at a different time than right now. So because I'd want to look at that. And anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Bonnie, it's a very fair question, and quite honestly, I looked at that. And if we were to freeze everybody 22 and above for everyone within the city would save $42,000. But you would have just frozen 70 employees' wages. But that is the net effect, $42,000. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to offer an amendment to the motion on the floor for the mayor and council members to take a 3% pay cut for the year 2011.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Let's do a roll call, please.
Quaker. Wah. Brown. Mason. Peterson. Wyffenbach. Davis. Adcock. Kroger. Motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. We needed to treat that as an amendment to the motion, so now we're back to the motion as amended. Correct, Jason? Okay. So we're back to the motion as amended, which would be to take a reduction in both the mayor's and the city council's salaries by 3%. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to item number 56. And Alderwoman Hadcock, if you would, please.
'56 is approve amendments to the tax increment financing guidelines. I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, I'm going to let both of you go in, but I'm just going to remind you, once I start the cadence, we typically don't let people in, but we'll both of you got in there just afterwards. So let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor, and again, my apologies for hitting it a little late there. I guess I'd like an explanation of exactly what's changing here, and more importantly, just so also the public knows what exactly is being changed and why we're revisiting the TIF guidelines.
Okay, let's go to Marcia Elkins.
This is a recommendation that came forward from the Tax Increment Financing Policy Committee. I believe it was last spring that they identified this issue, and they have recommended there be an item 6 added. It's the very last page of the policy, and that is to require the submission of the final cost certification to the finance officer within 120 days after the final acceptance of the project. What that will do is ensure that we don't have a tax increment financing project out there for a substantial period of time where interest will be accruing, and it will also make sure that other property owners who may have an interest, such as another developer in the tax increment district, can be paid off sooner rather than later. So it's just to provide a formal time frame for the submission of those final costs based on each phase.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Marcia Elkins.
Yep, go ahead, please.
Marcia, does the TIF requirements still require a certain percentage of blighted area in order for a TIF to be awarded?
Marcia?
State law requires that a minimum of 25% of the area of a tax increment district be blighted as defined by statute.
So these amendments it's really affects just one area. It doesn't affect the definitions or any of the basic policies that came out of the reform process a few years ago.
That's correct. There's no further changes other than item 6, which is underlined at the very end of the document.
Thank you, Marcia.
Okay, motion on the floor is for approval, item number 56. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the consent calendar. We're on to the continued consent items. These are items 68 through 76. 68 through 76. Chair would ask for any of these items need to be pulled from the continued consent calendar. Marcia? How about from the council? Seeing none, the chair will look for a motion to approve the continued consent items, items 68 through 76 inclusive, per the recommendations on the printed agenda. We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the continued consent. We're on to the non-consent items, items 77 through 93. 77 through 93. Chair will look for a motion to open the public comment period on items 77 through 93, please. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Do you have a speaker request form from Bill Peterson, item number 78? Mr. Peterson. There again, just a reminder, we do time this, so Mr. Peterson, if you would come up, identify yourself for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes, and as it turns yellow, you'll have about 30 seconds, and if it turns red, I'll ask you to just final up your remarks in the next 10 or 15 seconds. With that, Mr. Peterson, please identify yourself.
Thank you. My name is Bill Peterson. I reside at 2324 South Valley Drive. My partner and I, Don Jurassic, purchased a property on Doolittle Street, 241 Doolittle, a year ago, remodeled, so on and so forth, a large lot that we wanted to separate, go into 2 lots. We worked with growth management, so on and so forth, did everything we were supposed to do, thought everything was done, platting was all done. We came to the final day, and they said, oh, by the way, I take that back. We knew that they wanted a foot of our property before we subdivided this. We didn't have any problem with that, but then it was stated that we would have to put an application in for this and pay a fee of $250. We said, no. We're not going to give you a foot of our property and pay you $250 to do it. That's the whole issue, and it's ridiculous. We don't know why this is not already done, because we thought it was a slam dunk, working with growth management working with legal counsel from the city to do this amendment, and we don't understand why it's not done. Mr. Green says it's not legal. He's not sure whether it's not legal. I asked this council if he still has that feeling to direct him and give him a deadline to come up whether it's legal or not legal. We'd like to get our plat approved and get on with our business. We wanted to have this done the first of the year for tax reasons, so on and so forth. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. We also have a speaker request form from Robert Hatch on item number 85. 85, everyone. And Mr. Hatch, are you still here? There we go. There again, Mr. Hatch, if you would identify yourself for the record, and then you'll...
My name's Robert Hatch. I live at 222 Patton Street. And I just have a couple of concerns about the request to replat the 4 lots, empty lots in my neighborhood to 6 lots. I just don't think for it to be wanting to build 6 houses there. I don't think 6 houses will fit there. And also, there wouldn't be no room for off-street parking. There would have to be on-street parking, which would, there'd be traffic concerns with snow removal, and also at the apartment building on the corner of Wood and Patton Street, it'd be blocking the view of people leaving the parking lot. They wouldn't be able to see up the street with the cars parked on the street. And also with a trash collection, people would have to put their trash bins out in the street in order to get them picked up, which would create more traffic hazards. And I have more concerns, but that was some of them. So.
Okay, thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Cara Hatch, item number 85. There again, if you just identify yourself for the record.
Yep, I'm Kara Hatch, and I live at 222 Patton Street. I'm also wanting to speak about the plating request change for Block 22 and Block 11. City ordinance says that the block width can't be, or the block length can't be more than twice of the width. The way they have this preliminarily drawn out looks like a trailer court. If you're going to make them that small, move trailer houses in. But then again, you're going to violate your own ordinance because there won't be 25 feet between the trailer homes. I don't have a problem with the development. Put 4 houses on 4 lots. That'd be sufficient then to give the off-street parking and keep the neighborhood looking like a neighborhood and not a trailer park. My other concerns are the developers have to give up 3.5 feet on the Patton Street side to accommodate the pavement width of the street. How is that going to impact my property? Will I be forced to put in sidewalk where I don't have to now because I was grandfathered previously? Is that going to affect me? Am I going to have to incur a cost because of their development plans? The other concern is the water lines. We already have sufficient water pressure now. It's not the greatest, but it's sufficient. You put in 3 more homes on that water line, is my water pressure going to drop as well? And then to my husband's concerns, you put all this off-street parking. You can't see the kids crossing the street because they do go back and forth playing. And it is going to make it congested for garbage pickup, mail delivery, snow removal, and regular disc transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Don Duracek. Boy, Don, I think I might have just messed up your name pretty bad here. If you please pronounce your name, last name for us, and then the floor is yours, Don.
Don Jurasik, 3005 Copper Lane Court.
Item number 78, everyone.
I'm partners with Bill Peterson and discussing this ordinance amendment 10-0A017. One of the things that are also bothering us, we went into a business venture here. We hired plumbers, roofers, siders, in tens of thousands of dollars. Our last hurdle, I'd like to compliment growth management. The people down there are knowledgeable, hardworking, and they bend over backwards to help you. They worked with the city's attorney's office to get this amendment out there. The city attorney's office has had this amendment for 2 months. Until this is process done, we cannot sell the property and continue on with another endeavor. You've been talking about jobs here tonight. We hired a tremendous amount of people to help us with this project. If there's a legal problem with it, at this point, I think it should have been dealt with, or at least acknowledged or give us some abstract idea what the legal problem would be. But requesting a foot of our property for setback for future right-of-ways makes sense. To tell us we have to pay the city $250 to give for the privilege of giving them our property doesn't make sense. And we're just asking if we could please get this on a faster track than what it is. As Bill pointed out, we wanted to get this by the first of the year for tax purposes, but we also have future projects that we'd like to proceed with. And right now, this is tying us up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. That's all the speaker requests I have for items 77 through 93. Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak to any items 77 through 93? Okay, if not, Chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period. We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the non-consent items. Items number 77, and Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. Could you please read that in?
Thank you, Mayor. Number 77 is first reading of ordinance number 5700, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 5 for 2010, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Discussion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Finance. It looks to me like this means that we're going into our undesignated cash reserves, which is different than the regular reserves, but it's our undesignated cash reserves to the extent of $538,000.
Jeff, why don't you put some numbers together for me?
Yeah.
Can you just share? Can you put them up on the screen and share those
Okay.
with everyone?
Alderman Quaker, the $538,608 that you're seeing there, that was from the entire original 2010 budget. That is not from this final supplemental appropriation. The final supplemental appropriation, which is supplemental number 5, you'll see there goes into undesignated cash by $48,700. What I've done here is I've put together a few slides to show you some numbers where actually in terms of our both our undesignated cash, our reserves, our budget and expenses for 2010, we're actually doing very well. And should I, Mayor?
Go ahead.
Go ahead and present that at this time.
Good.
Okay. Basically, I put this together because of some questions that Alderman Weifenbach had at Legal and Finance, and he wanted me to explain a little bit about going into the undesignated cash, how much, and what we did, what we will do to cover those dollars. Now, the second number that you see from the top is our desired, we always want to have that 15% in cash reserves, liquid cash, if you will, not money that's invested or tucked away somewhere, but cash we could actually use. So that 15% is our goal. The $538,608 was what we budgeted to go into undesignated cash for our original 2010 budget. On the bottom of the screen there, that $586,000, that is money that reverted back. Money that's given back from the budget. That was in 2009. Now, we don't know what that reversion money is going to be for 2010 exactly, but I've put together some estimates here for us that will show some of that. Now, here's your general fund. What the first column is the annual working budget for the year. And at this point last year, it was $49,544,000. This year, with the budget reductions to 2010, it's $47,329,000. The budget that we have remaining as of November 30th, what we have remaining to spend is what you see in that second column. You see, because of the budget reduction, we have a little bit less money to spend. But percentage-wise, in that third column, we're actually sitting just slightly better than we were a year ago. Last year, in 2009, we had 14.8% of the budget left with 1 month to go. This year, we have 14.9% of the budget left with 1 month to go. Now, this is our actual expenses. And again, Alderman Weifenbach wants us to talk in terms of actual, so I put this together for him. Through November 30th, the first column is 2009 as opposed to 2010. So you can see there that we've spent about $2.5 million less actual dollars in the first 11 months of the year, this year as opposed to last year. The second column is actual expenses in December of 2009. The third column is the estimated expenses for December of 2010. Again, there I'm using my crystal ball a little bit, but what I'm doing is dividing the first 11 months and getting an average per month, which would give us a total estimated expenses in the final column of the $45,755,000, which is actual 2009, estimated for 2010, $42,923,000. Now this goes to the reversion dollars, and where we were on that first slide, we talked about the $538,000 that we needed to cover, as well as the numbers from the supplemental appropriations. Now last year, you'll see in 2009, the actual reversion was $586,000. That was the smallest reversion that we've had, looking at a 5-year historical. Now, obviously, budgets are tighter now. I don't think that that reversion is probably going to be any huge number, but I would think we would be safe to assume if we're around that same percentage or same number that we had last year, we should have about that as far as turnback or reversion dollars to cover what we need to cover and still have our 15% reserves. On the last slide here, you'll see that there's a lag in terms of reporting sales tax numbers. So the last month that we have complete sales tax numbers for 2010 is as of September 30th. But as of September 30th, we've had an increase of $356,792 in sales tax revenue above what we projected, above last year. So what we're saying is that's a 2.5% increase over 2009. So if I take the $356,000 and I add that to, and obviously we've got a quarter of the year left to go for those sales tax revenues, but if I take that number and I add it to what we should get back in reversion dollars from the budget, from the items that weren't used or weren't spent, we should more than cover the deficit that we have in terms of what we used in undesignated cash, and we should be at least at or probably above our 15% reserve that we like to keep on hand for cash. So I guess I'm using my crystal ball here a little bit, but what I'm trying to say is that that undesignated cash number, although it appears negative at this time, I think that we'll more than make that up by the end of the year, and that would probably be an outstanding topic for a late February or late January, maybe early February budget meeting to discuss where those actuals came out and where we're actually sitting. But again, this takes some speculation on my part at this point, but I think it's all going to work out nicely unless my crystal ball is really broken.
So Jeff, could you make sure that the council gets a copy of that? Could you email that out to them?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Alderman Quick, you still have the floor if you'd like it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Further discussion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'd just like to say, Jeff Barbier, good job. Way to explain it, and we appreciate the work you did on that just to figure out those numbers. We did ask that at Legal and Finance, and I don't know about the committee, but you answered everything that we asked, so I appreciate that.
Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. This is first reading of ordinance 5700. Seeing any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 78, Deb, if you would, please.
78 is first reading ordinance number 5691, an ordinance to allow setbacks to be reduced for existing structures as a result of dedicating right-of-way for H lots by adding section 17.50.255 to the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. This is item number 78. And you wanted, I'm sorry, what was the motion, Deb?
Move approval.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? Let's go to, and we had a second, correct, Charlene? Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. After hearing some of the concerns from Mr. Peterson and also his other business partner, I guess I'd like to find some clarification here on a couple of concerns they raised. Specifically, I guess I would direct this question dealing with the $250 that Mr. Peterson brought up, and also asking for a foot of their property through, I'm assuming, an easement of some kind. I guess I'd like to hear a little clarification on how that works and what exactly is going on.
Okay. Did you want to address that to Marcia Elkins or to Jason Green?
To Marcia.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
When property is being platted, we review it to determine if the adjacent right-of-way meets all of the standards and the improvements, street pavement, curb and gutter, and the like, all comply with city ordinance. In this case, I believe the pavement width was somewhat narrower, and the right-of-way was slightly narrower than is required. So the applicant then has is responsible for dedicating that additional right-of-way and improving the street to meet city standards, or submitting a subdivision variance. My understanding is that the variance was granted for the width of the pavement surface, and the applicant signed a waiver of right to protest. The assessment of that, should that road ever be expanded in the future, which is a standard procedure. And as had been the case, the variance was granted with the requirement that they go ahead and dedicate the right-of-way. Because there is existing structures on the site, in this case, that 25-foot front yard setback would not be met. That is a zoning requirement, not a platting requirement. And so the applicant would need to submit a request for a zoning variance. This was going through the process. We've had the situation come up a number of times. So at the very same meeting that this Mr. Peterson's property was being platted before the Planning Commission, September 23rd, you can review the staff report where it was identified in that original staff report. The Planning Commission also talked about the proposed amendment. And our hope was that we could find a way to adopt an ordinance amendment that would prevent them having to go through that zoning variance procedure.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan, you have still the floor.
Thank you. And thank you for that explanation, Ms. Elkins. I guess then that would lead me to the next concern that was raised up, dealing with the ordinance. There was a comment about it being with the city attorney's office, and I guess I'd direct the next question for further clarification on what the issue is mentioning that by Mr. Peterson's business partner, what exactly was the holdup, and if anything else is holding this up at this point.
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have asked for this item to be continued several times to allow us to attempt to find a way to make it work. And frankly, at this point, I would say I'm 90% plus sure that this ordinance would violate the requirements of zoning under South Dakota law. I'm willing to continue to look, but I really am not optimistic that we're going to find something that's workable. In essence, this ordinance amounts to a de facto variance in certain instances, and it creates non-uniform setback standards throughout a zoning district. So I think there are several problems with it that I don't believe we're going to be able to overcome. I'm willing to continue to look for a solution, though.
Okay. Mr. Mason, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I guess obviously because I've been speaking, I couldn't make the motion, but I guess I would like to ask any of my colleagues that maybe we should direct the city attorney to ask our state attorney or another counsel on that advice in his pursuit of finding a solution. And I guess I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had some conversations with Mr. Peterson concerning this property and understanding what's going on over there, and they're kind of caught in a quagmire because they're trying to do the right thing by bringing the setbacks up to the street criteria. This is an older neighborhood. I'm assuming it was built probably in the early 40s, maybe in the 30s, I'd say the earliest maybe, but what they're doing is they're in an existing neighborhood, and by platting off these extra plots, it triggers a zoning requirement for a setback. So once they have the setback, it puts the particular house that they already own into a variance position. So that's the problem. They want to give this right of way back to the city, but because if they do that, then it puts their house in a variance. And if they go to the variance board to ask for a variance for that house, which they probably may not know right now, if they sell that house, they're going to have, on a non-conforming market, they're going to have a hard time finding a lender that's going to do that loan, because if that house burns down, it has to have a variance to be rebuilt. And I'm not sure, I didn't have that discussion with Mr. Peterson yet, but so there's somewhat of a quagmire here, but in a discussion with our city attorney, felt that a subdivision variance may suit what their need is. So Mr. Mayor, I have a question for our city attorney.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Jason, does it require them to pay a fee for a subdivision variance?
Jason Green, city attorney.
Yes, I believe there is an application fee for the subdivision variance, although I believe Ms. Elkins indicated they've already applied for a subdivision variance on this property, and she might be able to clarify that.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
That subdivision variance has already been acted on, but the requirements for paying a fee for subdivision variance do not apply if there's a pending plat So there would not be a fee for that.
There would be no fee, okay. So we can eliminate the fee, and then they could also eliminate the having to give up their right-of-way if the council so chose to give them a variance. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Marcia?
I would ask that, Mr. Marshall.
Yep, that's fine. Marcia?
If the applicant submitted a subdivision variance, it went through the public hearing process, through the planning commission, before the city council, it is possible that you could approve that variance to waive the requirement for the additional right-of-way width.
Okay. So that would in turn make their property a conforming property, which in the long run is going to be better for the property that you own currently. One of the considerations I have is what kind of arose to this is we had our growth management department trying to do the right thing and trying to attack this going forward in the future, these areas where these problems arise. And we had a developer or a business venture trying to do the right thing by giving up the right-of-way, and now it's caused a quagmire in a time frame that's been longer than they wanted to. I guess, Mr. Mayor, I would ask Marcia, is there a way that we can expedite this time frame for them in some manner?
Marcia?
Certainly, if they would submit the subdivision variance procedure or the zoning variance application, we would do anything we could legally to meet the timeframes that, for notification that are required, and put it on the most expeditious agenda that we could, meeting those requirements. And please don't ask me to tell you what those are off the top of my head. I'd have to sit down and look at that.
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Parsons.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Parsons, do you understand what we're talking about here with the the development variance or whatever it is? Pardon? No. You don't understand?
My recommendation would be have them get together with Marcia in the morning and.
Okay.
But
I
you
wanted to
before.
get together with them before tonight. I just didn't get a chance to do that. So, because in the long run, I think it's going to be better for your project over there, and it's going to be better for the home that's already built there. If you get the variance and all those types of things, understanding we could still move forward on our law here, but we probably should work this from both directions to try to get what your outcome is trying to be. And then there was another constituent concerned about some of the sidewalks in her area, Mr. Mayor, and I'd pose a question to Marcia.
Go ahead, Marcia.
Would his plating affect her sidewalk? Would it trigger her an event that she would have to build a sidewalk?
Marcia?
Well, just to clarify, there's two different subdivisions up in the Mahoney Addition. The one that Mr. Peterson and Mr. Jurassic are working on are not the ones that are next door to the other property, which I had
These are
to.
non-related. Okay.
I had to clarify myself
Okay. Well,
this morning,
thank
but
you for clarifying that for me, so we won't be concerned about that right now. So, but I'm not sure. I guess I'd like to move forward with this ordinance, because at some time, this council needs to address what happens in these older neighborhoods when people try to retrofit or try to develop a neighborhood and make it a nicer neighborhood. So I'm all for moving forward with this and then still moving forward with subdivision variance for Mr. Parsons. So with that being said, I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Marcia, can you tell me how much right-of-way that we usually need in a neighborhood? Is it 10 feet?
No, it's specific to each of the different classifications of the street. For Mr. Peterson's case, that's an item 71 on the agenda in the staff report. I was looking at earlier tonight, it's either 1 or 2 additional feet on his side to meet the requirements for the road. It varies depending on whether it's collector and arterial or a local or sub-collector street. And I believe it's in the body of the report, about 3/4 of the way down.
Okay, thank you. I guess my point is, do we have to, I'm with Weifenbach, it's an older neighborhood, are we going to need that foot of right-of-way? I mean, is this something that's going to, because sometimes it seems like that we could get away with not having 8 feet or 10 feet or whatever on that right-of-way, so we could expedite the process by, again, not requiring, in a sense, to give that foot of right-of-way. Or is that not legal either? Marcia?
Marcia?
Well, certainly, you could look at some different standards that which would have a narrower right-of-way, but again, that comes the issue of consistency and what the right-of-way needs are. It's very difficult today to figure out what the right-of-way needs are that will be in place perhaps 5 or 10 years from now. We have minimum standards that we apply on all collector streets, sub-collector, local, and arterial streets. And it's not just the pavement section or curb and gutter. Oftentimes it's the sidewalk, it's the water, the sewer. We have narrowed our sections down considerably, and the new street criteria manual actually has addressed that as well. So we've pretty much tightened this down to what we believe we need for the future, although individual areas may vary significantly.
Okay, I appreciate that. And this is first reading, so if any changes come about, that we can make those changes, and I can still discuss some of this with you. So I appreciate you looking into this, Marcia, and Jason as well, trying to find some solution, because like I said, if this doesn't work out, there's still second reading, but at least these guys hopefully can move forward and get some type of explanation what they can do next. So, thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion. Motion on the floor is for approval of first reading. Marcia, just a question. What is, structurally, what's stopping these gentlemen from moving forward with their development? Is it the lack of change here or not?
They need to either submit a subdivision variance, a zoning variance, or we need to change the rules.
Okay. I guess the point I'm coming across is I'm with Alderman Weifenbach, is they're probably better off going through the process, because even if we change the rules, we're probably going to be close to the end of January. Even if this goes through without delay, it's going to be the end of January before it becomes effective.
And we've had that conversation with Mr. Peterson and Mr. Jurassic and made sure that they were aware of those options,
Okay.
and we'll be glad to revisit with them again.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval, first reading of ordinance number 5691. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 79, please.
79 is first reading ordinance number 5612, an ordinance repealing Chapter 15.48 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to mobile homes and mobile home parks, and adopting a new revised Chapter 15.48 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. How does this ordinance change for 79 and also 80? Marcia, how does it affect existing mobile home parks? For example, item 191 should be 10RZ047.
Marcia?
I think if you'll notice on the first item, item 79, that deals with Chapter 15, Brad Solon's put together a memo that kind of has a summary of those. This allows one very positive change in that if you can meet the clearance requirements between the units in a non-conforming mobile home park, you can actually expand and bring in newer, larger manufactured homes. Also would allow there to be two-story manufactured homes, reduces the clearance between those required manufactured homes if there's sprinkler systems. We have one gentleman in town who's looking at retrofitting existing manufactured home parks that are older, 1950s vintage kind of areas, where he'd like to put in two-story units and also fire sprinkle those as a way of trying to provide greater floor area. There are some requirements that have to be met in all cases on an annual basis. That is the lot numbering, the skirting, the signage, and the fire lanes, and it was felt those are basic fire safety issues that need to be addressed. Also shifts the park licensing from December 31st to July 30th so that people can actually do some of the corrections and changes and take care of some of these issues when the weather is decent. We won't have to have a number of continuations. And again, it did not have a significant increase in the cost of the permits on an annual basis. Rather, the mobile home park owners felt it was best that those people that had to have multiple inspections should pay for those inspections. It did change the definition of manufactured home park. It used to be that if you had, under the current ordinance, 25 or more manufactured homes would qualify as a park. Again, because of some of the safety issues, we're down to more than 2 manufactured homes on a single parcel would qualify as a park. So those are some of the highlights of the changes. But I think the most exciting part is the fact that some of these areas will be able to bring in larger, more modern manufactured homes, which would improve the quality of life for the people that live in them.
Okay, Alderman Quake, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to clarify then, Marcia, if this ordinance 79 and also number 80 pass, for example, would it require a conditional use permit or plan development designation for 10RZ047?
Marcia?
Or would
So
that be
item-
grandfathered in?
191?
Yes, 191.
They would be a legal nonconforming use, allowed to continue as they are now. They'd actually be allowed to bring in the larger mobile homes into that area. If they wanted to expand the number of manufactured homes, then they would need to get the conditional use permit.
But they could continue as is without a conditional use permit or a PDD.
Correct, and that's always been the case with the same size or smaller mobile home. This would actually allow them to bring in more reasonable sized mobile homes to fit the current production size.
Thank you.
Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I would direct this question to Marcia Elkins as well. There were some concerns raised watching the Legal and Finance this week about the skirting issue. And after reading this, I was just curious if any of these safety standards are applied to other real properties, such as a home or any other sort of property, or if this is just particular to mobile homes.
Marcia?
My understanding, and again, I know this basically from having sat through a number of public hearings and public meetings, is that currently there are requirements for skirting in the building code and fire code that they have to be meet certain flame resistance, again, because of the concern of smoke. There are similar kinds of requirements in the building code, but the building code and the HUD 76 construction standards for manufactured homes come at construction from two different angles. And so those standards are different. There are materials that can be used in home construction. Again, fire rating of those are identified. So they're addressed, but in different fashions. So I would say there's not a direct comparison between what you would see for skirting requirements in a manufactured home district versus what you would see for house-type siding. But they both have certain standards for flame resistance and the like. And I'm way outside of my expertise on the fire flammability requirements of those, and Chief Malteburn may be able to bail me out here.
Yep. Mr. Mason, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I guess what I'm curious about is, with some of these requirements, I'm curious if, because I'm seeing non-combustible materials, and then some ratings, and I'm not familiar with those ratings, and I was wondering if I could maybe get some clarification on what that meant, and, you know, also for the public as well, for those that it will affect.
Let's go to Chief Malteburn.
Thank you for the question. And what we're talking about is the combustibility or the flammability of those materials that they would use for skirting. When we require somewhat of more of a non-flammable or non-combustible material, what happens when a mobile home catches fire is they burn very, very hot and very, very fast, okay, compared to a single-family dwelling or a house. When one of them catches fire, it's very typical for those mobile homes to be situated so close together that we now get concerned about the next mobile home catching fire and the next one and the next one. So when we have requirements to have that skirting be of somewhat of a non-combustible material, if they use plywood, for instance, you get one mobile home going, you can get the skirting of the next mobile home to catch fire just due to the radiant heat. It's not uncommon to pull up and have, especially on a windy night in the winter months in South Dakota, to have one mobile home completely on fire when you get there just after, say, 10 minutes, and have adjacent mobile homes catch fire just due to the radiant heat. So there's very specific requirements when you start lining those things up, literally, you know, as we're talking, we talk about setbacks and things like that, or the spacing between those mobile homes. It's critical to protect those from just going from a single family or a mobile home catching fire to it being a conflagration and getting several mobile homes on fire. So very specific with those ratings that we put on those skirting materials.
Thank you. And I guess I'll direct my last question to Marcia Elkins. In either one of these ordinances, 79 and 80, and I guess Alderman Quaker kind of hinted at it, but will this prevent anyone that is under the legal nonconforming status currently, will it prevent them from any sort of internal alterations to their home or any sort of, will it prevent them essentially to say, will it prevent them from using their property as they normally would currently?
Marcia?
Again, they're legal nonconforming uses, and so they're allowed to continue to use those existing manufactured homes. Currently, they can bring a same size or smaller unit into that space in a mobile home park. This would allow them to put a larger unit in if they could meet the clearance requirements. So it actually reduces the limitations on the use of that mobile home park.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Marcia, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please.
Marcia, if on one of these mobile homes, if a person was going to put like say a lean-to, or I think some people refer to them as like a mud room or something like that, currently, do they need a building permit for that?
Marcia?
Actually, there's certain restrictions on additions. My understanding is currently there are no additions allowed. And then, but you can like place a deck up against that area, or you can have a patio that's created, again, adjacent to that, but you cannot enclose that and create another space. And yes, you are required to obtain a permit for that deck, depending on the height. There's a limitation on that.
Currently, they can't build a mudroom or a lean-to, or, I mean, on their mobile home if it fits all the other setbacks and everything. An enclosed room, to keep, the way trailers are made is conducive to putting one of these on to protect them from the elements as they, change their shoes or coats or whatever.
Actually,
Marcia?
the federal standards, the 1976 HUD standards, do not allow you to make alterations to that manufactured home, and if you do, it invalidates the certification that's been granted by that from the inspections that are done in the manufacturing plant. We have had a situation in a commercial district where we had a manufactured structure that was built to federal standards, where they actually took an O-ring kind of thing and actually pressed a building up against that and had it certified by an engineer that it met the standards. But if you go in and you start to tack things on to the outside of a manufactured home, it's structurally not necessarily designed to accommodate that. So that actually invalidates the HUD certification that the federal government grants to manufactured homes.
Yeah, and I'm fine with all that, but my question is currently today, can someone build a mudroom on there? Say if they had an engineer design the mudroom and it worked, can they currently, are we changing that, I guess, is the question I'm asking, Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
Are we changing it from something they could do to something they can't do now?
Marcia, do you understand the question?
I understand the question. I'm just trying to, if you look at the old structure, the old language in 1548-100 that's stuck through online, no permanent additions of any kind shall be built onto or become a part of a mobile home park unless a secondary emergency exit from the mobile home is provided, which does not open into the addition. That's the current standard. Under the new standards, no additions would be allowed. Although, as you'll note in the document, we have had that conversation with a number of the mobile home park owners and have said that we would continue to have additional discussions on finding ways to do that would not invalidate the 76 HUD standards.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. I think that if you had an engineer design a mudroom that fit onto one of those, the mobile homes are built with 2x4s or even sometimes 2x6s now, which is different than they built them. And they build them in different areas for different types of climates and whatever, different types of wind factors. People down south wouldn't have the same mobile home as someone in South Dakota would have. They're built to a different type standard. And the other question I had, Mr. Mayor, is the bottom one here when it in reference to the fire department accessing these people's mobile homes. I just need some clarification on this. The fire department shall have the power to enter at reasonable times upon any private or public property for the purpose of inspecting and investigating conditions relating to the enforcement of this chapter. It shall be the duty of the owner or occupant of the mobile home park and the mobile home contained therein or in the person in charge thereof to give the fire department free access to such premises at reasonable times for the purpose of inspections. I just need some clarification on that.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Chief and Chief Multford. Is that something that you have the authority to do now? I think where Alderman Weifenbach is going is I think he's asking, are we asking for additional access to the property?
No, I think my understanding is that's just to put some language in there that would allow us that access if we need to go out and do an inspection to check out the widths of the roadways and things like that. We receive calls quite regularly from concerned people that live in mobile home parks that the access in those parks is not adequate for fire apparatus. So we go out and inspect those, follow up on those calls, and we do find out that indeed there is parking issues due to some of those lane width requirements, things like that, that really limit our access to our large fire apparatus. And like I spoke of, when you get one of those mobile homes on fire, it's imperative that we get in there as absolutely quickly as we can. And if you ever drive through one of them, they really get bottlenecks. Some of them are dead end with inadequate turnarounds and things like that currently. So I think it just provides us the latitude to go in and follow up on those concerns and to go out and do those inspections and make sure that they're maintaining the appropriate widths.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'd turn to Jason Green and ask for a clarification. My understanding is that it gives the fire department the ability to access a person's mobile home contained therein or the person in charge thereof to give free access to. I don't have any issue with, making sure the roadways are clear and the setbacks are fine, but I do have some concern with the ability just to say, I want to go inside your house and check it out. I mean, I'd like some clarification on this.
Sure, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This language is similar to language that exists in the ordinance today. I don't believe it permits the fire department to enter the actual mobile home. I would be happy to say for certain at second reading, but I'm pretty confident in saying that it applies to those safety areas that the chief referred to, not the interior of someone's home.
Okay, I understand that. So we'll get some kind of a clarification on that, or maybe we could put something in there that clearly states that. Because when I read it, I think it gives them free access to these people's mobile homes for whatever reason, which seems unnecessary to me. And the other one is I have an issue with not being able to put an enclosed structure on here, so I'm not going to support this at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you. I have additional questions at this point, and I'm hoping, Marcia, you can clarify. I asked previously if this would hinder their ability to use their property, and then I heard later that no additions will be allowed. I guess I'm kind of hoping to find out which is which here. So they can't add or do anything to their property, or if we could just clarify this, because I'm a bit confused now.
Okay, Marcia, I think the question is can they currently put additions on, and will the passing of this ordinance restrict them from putting those on?
As I answered to Mr. Wiefenbach, the current ordinance does have language allowing additions, even though the federal law does not allow you to place additions on the HUD certified 76 and newer manufactured homes.
Thank you. And it's my understanding that we're talking about the HUD certifications just dealing with the manufactured housing, correct?
Marcia?
Correct. Manufactured homes are built to HUD certification standards. Stick-built homes are built to the International Building Code. The federal government has preempted any local regulation of a manufactured home by requiring that the HUD 76 standards be met.
I guess I have an additional question because I wasn't sure how those things worked exactly, but I'm wondering, I noticed on the quick FAQ under HUD, it says that retailers can make alterations to a new home without affecting the certification. So if they can do it, why couldn't a homeowner do it after consulting, as this advises, consulting the HUD office? Why one and not the other?
My understanding is that to do the HUD certification, you have to meet certain inspection requirements, and that you had to have somebody that inspects it. But I could follow up on that for you in more detail.
Appreciate that, Marcia. I additionally, with Mr. Weifenbach at this time, am a little too unclear to support this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, motion on the floor is for approval of first reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion. Let's take a quick roll call, please.
Quaker.
No.
Waugh. Brown. Mason. Peterson. Weifenbach. Davis. Hadcock. Kroger.
5 to 4, motion fails. An ordinance, you need to have 6 votes, so the motion does fail. What I would look for is a motion to continue or another motion to basically dispose of this item.
refer back.
This is first reading, so 2 weeks? Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this item for 2 weeks to the next city council meeting. Any discussion on the continuation motion, and we will restrict the discussion only to whether it's appropriate to continue or not. With that, let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Would the motion maker accept a friendly amendment for this to make a stop off at Legal and Finance?
Okay, is that right with the seconder? Actually, we're going to treat this basically as a new motion. Basically, the motion is going to be to actually send this to Legal and Finance. It'll make its way back anyway. So the motion on the floor is to continue this back to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Any further discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
So on, Marcia, just a question. We're continuing this on the basis that we're going to do what? Because legally, we just said we couldn't add additions. So what would change on this, Marcia, if we continued this?
Marcia?
My understanding is that the council would like some clarification of what happens with the HUD certification when changes are made, and to look further at the issue of the additions. If there's something else you'd like staff to look at, I guess I'd ask for clarification. Those are my notes from the conversation.
To me, this could have went through first reading with that clarification by second reading to make this go through, instead of continuing something that has been worked on by staff very hard for a long time. Sometimes we continue so many things on here that I don't have that understanding, that if you have these questions by second reading, you can bring that forth and still let things go, move forward. So I didn't understand the continuance. I mean, we're there at this point, but I didn't understand the continuance, because I too have those concerns as well, but I can bring those back by second reading, and Marcia can bring that information to the council members and keep this moving forward.
Yep, thank you. There again, motion on the floor is to continue this, or actually send it back to Legal and Finance, and we're going to restrict discussion to that topic only. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. I believe in Legal and Finance last week that there were other questions. There was going to be a meeting, and I forgot what the gentleman's name was that had spoke about this ordinance. And so that's, I just felt like we needed more time to get all the details worked out. So,
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you. And the reason that we continued it was for the opportunity for it to come back, because it did get denied or didn't get approved. So, but I wanted to clarify, one of the things that I would like to have is the city attorney to clarify the part on the access to the trailers, and obviously can they or can they not build structures that are enclosed onto a trailer. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Motion is to send this to Legal and Finance. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, and I'll keep my comments short. But I do admire the dedication that our staff has put into a lot of these ordinances, and I realize the immense amount of time that goes into it. But a friend of the family who was a carpenter once said that you always want to measure twice and cut once. And I guess to make sure that we apply due diligence to this, I would like to make sure that we're measuring twice, or making sure that we're addressing each and every need correctly. And then when we do this, we do it correctly the first time out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is send this back to Legal and Finance. Continue to the Legal and Finance. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 80, please.
Number 80 is first reading ordinance number 5630, an ordinance repealing section 17.50.110 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to the supplemental regulation applicable to mobile home parks, and adopting new revised 17.50.110 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And I move approval.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Marcia, did you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, these are companion items, so my request would be that you'd send this back to Legal and Finance so that they could move through the process together.
Okay, could we have a substitute motion then, please? Okay, we have a motion, a substitute motion and a second to also send this item back to Legal and Finance. Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Takes us to item 81, please.
81 is first reading of ordinance number 5701, an ordinance amending Title 15, Chapter 15.24 of the Rapid City Municipal Code by adopting the 2009 Uniform Plumbing Code and adding amendments thereto. I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval of first reading of ordinance number 5701. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 82, please.
82 is the first reading ordinance of 5702, an ordinance amending Section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to general commercial district located at 3887 East Highway 44. I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. We're dealing with item number 82, which is first reading of ordinance number 5702. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was not able to drive out and look at these locations, and I really like it when I have aerial views linked to these, because I like to be able to see where it sits in relationship to its neighbors. So I would hope that we could get that done by the second reading. Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion is for approval of first reading of ordinance number 5702, item number 82. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 82 or 83, please.
83 is the first reading of ordinance number 5703, an ordinance amending 17.06 of Chapter 17 of Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to mobile home residential district located at 2919, 2925, and 2931 Orchard Lane. And I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of first reading of ordinance number 5703, which is the rezoning from no use to mobile home residential. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 84, please.
84 is the first reading of ordinance number 5704, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Dream Design International, rezoning from general commercial district to light industrial district located northeast of the intersection of Dias Avenue and Interstate 90 north and south of East Mall Drive, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval of first reading of ordinance number 5704, item number 84. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Marcia, just a brief explanation of why general commercial to light industrial. We had a little bit of discussion at agenda review this morning on what's happening on that property, and I don't know if I'm confused of why we're putting light industrial there instead of general commercial, and how that affects that area for future land use.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins, Public Works Director, or Growth
Please,
Management
no.
Director.
I'm having enough fun tonight.
Go ahead, Marcia.
The Future Land Use Committee has reviewed this, and it will be going to Planning Commission. You see the first reading before the Planning Commission's recommendation comes forward. The discussion at the Future Land Use Committee was the potential purchaser of this property has indicated that because of the large amount of commercial land that is on the market right now, they believe the most appropriate use of this property is for light industrial properties and uses. And so the Future Land Use Committee has recommended that that change occur. That will be working its way through the Planning Commission and on to you for further consideration. There is a great deal of commercial property on the market at the current time, and I believe that is the rationale that the future owner had indicated when he brought this request forward. I was not able to attend that Future Land Use Committee meeting, but Mr. Brown might be able to. I believe he was able to attend.
So basically, Marcia, we're mixing in this area light industrial with general commercial, and that works out just fine in this area.
Marcia?
That will be what will be discussed by the Planning Commission. There is light industrial further to the north, and so it's kind of a transitional area.
I guess that was my point, is we're kind of mixing and matching in this area, and I didn't know if we usually did that, and for the future of this area, if we maybe for landscaping and different things, so it starts to look a little bit more into the beautification type area with light industrial. I guess that's more of my concern, so we kind of make that area, so if we're going to mix and match, to maybe acquire some of that.
Mr. Mayor?
Marcia?
I did get a chance to review the minutes of the Future Land Use Committee tonight, and I believe their recommendation is to do this in conjunction with the plan development because of the concerns about the visual aspects of this along the interstate. So, again, that full recommendation will come forward to you from the Planning Commission, and we'll be sure to address that when it comes back.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Gary Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I am a member of the Future Land Use Committee, and I can add nothing more to what Marcia said, and that's exactly what I'm bringing it forward. We felt that this would be a match in this particular situation. It should come in with the requirements that all the landscaping and everything look at, but we want to get it on to the Planning Commission and make sure that our thinking was still the right way, the way it was going to fit in the overall picture. So I think Alderman Hadcock, it's probably a good move in this case. Thank you.
Very good. Dealing with item number 84, which is first reading of ordinance number 5704. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 85, please.
Number 85 is a request by D.C. Scott Surveys Incorporated for Northern Development LLC for a layout plat located east of Wood Avenue between Lindbergh Avenue and Patton Street, approved with stipulations.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Hi, thank you. I was wanting to ask the people, the neighbors that came and spoke against this, if, as I look at this, it looks to me like they could build in that space one of those much larger complex. Would that be preferable to you? I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel for it, than to divide it in six.
Well,
could you
do me a favor,
mind-
if you would please come up and just identify yourself for the record, and just so you know, before you start, when we have questions, we always ask those in the audience if you could just reply to the questions that are asked, because we have had the public comment period. So Bonnie, could you just repeat your question again? And
Sure. I'm just wondering if, because when I look at the aerial view around it, there's some real big complexes, and it seems to me they could put one of those on there, and I'm just trying to figure out what would be more preferable to you, this little 6 individual lots or one of those bigger.
My preference would be...
Cara, could you
Yep.
please identify yourself for the
My
record?
name's Kara Hatch, and I live at 22 Patton Street.
Thank you.
The back lots on the Lindbergh side are already zoned medium density. They have since changed their plans since that zoning request was made and approved. They are now moving forward with single-family households again. I don't feel the neighborhood can take the congestion of the additional traffic and the cars when you put 6 homes on 4 lots.
Thank you.
Okay, but, because I'm thinking if we don't approve this, that they might come back to one of these other ones that are like on the left side. Is that something like that preferable to you?
No, ma'am, it's not.
That's why I'm just trying to figure out which is the least offensive.
The least offensive is, there's 4 lots there, there's 4 homes.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
the least offensive, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you. I guess I would direct this question to probably Marcia Elkins. But there's been a lot of talk about and a lot of issues raised by Mr. and Mrs. Hatch about the street parking and especially sight triangles and also congestion in the traffic, which could possibly pose some hazards. So there were obviously some safety concerns that were raised here, and I would appreciate any response you could give us on whether or not, what sort of safety concerns or information you have on the congestion in that area.
Marcia?
I think you had a chance to look at the plat, which is what they're proposing here, is to create 6 lots. 3 would front onto Lindbergh, and 3 would front onto Patton. And as you can tell, there's a variety of lot sizes in the neighborhood already. Most of them are slightly larger, although a few of them, if you notice over in this area, are actually perhaps smaller than some of the ones that might be allowed. So with the exception, as I understand it from reviewing the staff's recommendation, this meets the requirements with the exception of the lot length to width. In other words, these lots end up being a little bit skinnier. I'm not very steady today there with my, than typically would be allowed. So that would require an exception, and that's one of the items that was identified in the report. This is the layout plat that's going forward for your consideration. Again, that was really the only item other than the dedication of the right-of-way. I think there was an question asked earlier regarding the sidewalk. Again, the sidewalk has to be installed at the time a building permit is pulled on any property, and so they would be putting in sidewalk here and at this location. I think the concern is whether that would affect this property owner. Directly, no. At the time the building permit is issued for a new structure, that is when the sidewalk is required. But certainly, when there is sidewalk, as you can see all the way around here, and that's continued, if there is an interest or demand for it or safety concerns, it would not be unusual for the council to hear discussion about the potential for wanting to extend those sidewalks on, which at that point in time may affect those property owners. So in terms of safety, the density, the minimum lot sizes can meet the requirements. It's only the width to depth ratio that I believe is needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Thank you. And additionally, Ms. Elkins, so the width to the depth, just to clarify, that's talking about the width of the road to the depth of the setback, correct?
No, it's the depth of the lot to the width. It's how skinny that lot is.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I guess appreciate the feedback and being able to address those concerns.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval with stipulations. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question for Marcia.
Go ahead, please.
On the depth width, are you saying that it? What if they just shortened up the lot? I mean, is it a calculation that says if you're this wide, you have to be this long, or?
Marcia?
That's correct. And again, because this block and the depth of those currently, these end up being skinnier lots than what you would typically see.
Okay, so the lot will be long and thin. I mean, it long and skinny. But if the whole block was shorter, would that fit what you're looking for? I guess I'm going to have a hard time understanding what the depth, the width mean.
Yeah. Again, if the lot was not as
long.
Yeah, as long. I've been playing with my iPad too much. I want to touch the screen here. If it wasn't as long, then you could potentially meet that requirement.
But you'd still have 6 lots then?
Again, we're working with the existing conditions, so yes, potentially, depending on the area and the lot size. 6,500 is the minimum lot size requirement for the zoning district for an individual single-family home.
And these will be how much, Marcia?
I'd have to do the calculation. These are at .167 acres times 43,560. I'd need a calculator.
It would be close, but they would meet it.
They will meet the requirements, yes.
They would?
They do currently.
Okay. Then the other question, Mr. Mayor, I had was for Robert, and I don't know if he's prepared to answer this, but would it change the water flows there, water pressures in the area?
Robert?
Yeah, I don't think so. Not with the type of usage that you see for a single-family residential. I don't think you're going to put that kind of a demand on the system.
Then one more question, Mr. Mayor, and that'd be for Marcia. They'll be required to put in a driveway, right? I mean,
That's correct.
With a 25-foot setback, so that, I mean, that would actually allow 2 cars to park before it was on the sidewalk.
Correct. And for single-family residents, they have to provide 2 off-street parking spaces. The first 50 foot of the driveway is required to be paved. Beyond that can be paved surface.
Because the sidewalk will be all the way to the front of the road.
Correct, the sidewalk will be out in the right-of-way.
Right, but they'll at least have that whole area to
25
park.
feet between, typically it's about 26 feet between the actual edge of the sidewalk and the front of the house.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, the motion on the floor is for approval with stipulations. Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 86, please.
86 is to approve revised technology resource usage policy, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that Alderman Costello had raised a concern regarding some of the language on page 3, and since he is here tonight, I would offer a motion to continue for 2 weeks.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to continue this item for 2 weeks. Any discussion on that motion? There again, please keep in mind, we're going to discuss only whether or not it's appropriate to continue. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I appreciate us continuing this, but nothing has came forward from Mr. Costello at this point, so I'm trying to figure out why we keep continuing. Again, these are issues that we continue, and then, like I tell people, you have to do your work. If you don't do the work on it and you bring nothing forward, then why do we keep continuing it? I mean, I've said this before, and it's not just him personally, it's people in general. For the council, if you're bringing something forward, bring something forward. The staff has done their work, and now we're going to continue this on another basis of someone was going to bring something forward. There's nothing on the table right now, and if you're going to bring it forward, bring it forward. At this point, I'm not into continuing this because I haven't seen anything yet. And how long has this been on the agenda? Does anybody know? A few months. So we come back and we tell the staff, don't delay us. But at this point, this is being delayed by a council member. So again, do your work. I understand people have things happening in their lives that they can't get things done, but at least bring something or something we have something to talk about to move this forward in a timely fashion. I think the biggest issue here is the email and if we should use it. And at this point, I haven't seen anything on the table that sounds legitimate at this point.
Thank you. Further discussion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question came up in Legal and Finance, and I think that one of the questions that Aaron had brought up was basically irrelevant to this being moved forward, and maybe Mr. Tinsville can answer that question.
Go to Russ Tinsvold, IT Officer.
While I have an idea of what Aaron was interested in, I really don't want to speak for him. And I just would say that I don't have strong feelings about whether or not this gets continued or not. It needs to be addressed at some point, but whether it's today or at the next meeting, it really doesn't make much difference to me.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Let's go back to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I think clarification is needed. My understanding, Deb, based on the previous discussion, doesn't have anything to do with people looking at email at meetings. This doesn't even address that at all. This is about the third bullet point on the top of page 3, which says whenever IT has a request to view the email of a city employee or city elected official, a log will be kept by the IT officer noting the person making the request, date of request, and email account viewed. The exception is the case of a routine computer or network server maintenance. It says absolutely nothing about the process for requesting email. It says nothing about who's going to approve it. It says nothing about checks and balances. It says nothing about how that's actually going to work. It's not a good policy to have in there. I commend Alderman Costello for picking up on that and raising it to raising the issue, and I think that it's an important issue that needs to be addressed. And so I don't think it's necessary to attack council members who can't be here to defend themselves. I think we either address that issue, answer the question tonight, and I'm trying to be courteous to Alderman Costello, who couldn't be here, to continue this for another 2 weeks. This has not been on agenda after agenda after agenda after agenda. It's been a while since it's been on an agenda. It was continued for a period of time. And so I'm just simply trying to help out, and I would ask that the messenger not be shot. Thank you.
Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
If that's the point, at this point, then call somebody and continue it. Don't set another council member up to continue something that we have at this point, like you said, to bring it forward. That's not an attack. I know if I work on something and can't bring it forward, I have that responsibility as a council member. We do this not once in a while. We start doing this, then we just put things on the agenda, and we expect the staff to get it done for us. So this is not a personal attack on him personally. It's on council members doing their work. So you can take it as that, and I appreciate you bringing it and continue it some more, but I would hope something would come forward from this when we work on issues to do with council members and getting the work done. So it's not him personally, it's towards all of us. So thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue this item for 2 weeks to the next council meeting. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. 87, please.
87 is to approve waste and fraud hotline use policy, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reading through this, and the people that will be notified when these things come through, can Mr. Green tell us how that notification will work?
Sure. Jason, can you walk us through as far as who would be notified?
Yes, the three people that will receive the notifications are the mayor, city attorney, and community resource director. After they receive that notification, they will meet and discuss the item that's been received and determine a course to proceed on. Once that's resolved, they'll maintain a record of that, and that record will be presented to the council quarterly. In accordance with the council's notification policy, if there's something that comes through that requires notification of the council, that will happen.
It's too late for me to offer a motion, but I hope my colleagues will bring something forward in order to maintain the checks and balances. I'd like to see council leadership in that loop. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to offer an amendment. This would apply to points 1 and 2 of the hotline use policy, and that amendment will be that council president and vice president be added as points of contact and added to the meeting of people that will look at the course of action on addressing a complaint.
Yep, that's a motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second to include council leadership, the president and the vice president of the council to be included on items 1 and 2, and that would be on page 2, to include them in the discussion. Okay? So we will treat this as an amendment, so we'll talk about the amendment only, and then we'll come back and vote on the full implementation. Discussion on the amendment. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Alderman Weifenbach and Quaker. I actually had not thought of a recommendation like that, and I commend it. It's a good idea to keep everyone in the loop as much as possible. Additionally, I just want to publicly thank our city attorney for a lot of his hard work, and unfortunately our community resource director that is no longer with us, Kevin Tome, and I know the current community resource director has aided me also in some advice in this project, and I just want to commend city staff for their efforts in this. Thank you again.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is a motion to amend to include notification of council leadership, vice president, and the president of the council. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're back to the original motion for approval as amended. Any further discussion on that? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the city attorney clarification regarding point number 6. And it says, the council shall be notified of allegations made via the waste and fraud hotline as required by the council notification policy. So, Jason, does this mean that each call to the waste and fraud line would be summarized and the council would be informed at the next council meeting, or it would be, how would that determination be made, and what would be the standard of evidence or proof required in order to notify the city council of a possible fraud?
Okay. Jason?
I will say that I don't believe every call will generate notification to the council. The standard is what is written into the council notification policy, and I don't have that in front of me right now, so I can't recite it to you verbatim. But frauds that involve $10,000 or more, there are a number of other things in that notification policy that would trigger the requirement to report. But for example, if someone calls and reports that council members are engaged in fraud because they're leaving with pins from every council meeting, something like that probably doesn't need to be reported. And I think that what the notification policy that's before you anticipates is that the council leadership, the mayor, the city attorney, community resource director will make those decisions. But at the end of the day, it is the council's previously adopted notification policy that will govern those decisions.
Go back to Alderman Quake, you still have the floor.
Okay, so so I guess it leaves it open to judgment as to whether or not the information is delivered to the city council, and that concerns me, because we know that there can be situations where it is deemed that there is not a problem, and then it turns out later to be a problem. And I think that at least for a while, we should simply be notified of the allegations made via the waste and fraud hotline. And if we as the council get tired of hearing about it at subsequent executive sessions or whatever venue is brought forward to let us know, then if there's too many calls, then first of all, we probably have perhaps a real process issue at City Hall that we need to look at. But secondly, we can cross that bridge when we come to it. So, based on the experience that Sioux Falls had, where they had just a couple of calls a year, I don't think that it's too much to ask, at least for starters, for this council to be notified if there is a call to the waste and fraud line. That way, none of the 5 people on the committee can then later, nobody can say that they should have notified the council when if they didn't. So I think that I would like to encourage somebody. I guess I can't because I've already been talking on this, but I think that we should consider another amendment to item number 6 that simply says that removes the words "as required by council notification policy" and simply says the council should be notified of allegations made via the fraud and waste hotline, and that is my recommendation. And I also, because I probably won't be allowed to speak another time on this item, so I also want to say that I am concerned. I think I understand why, but I'm concerned about council members not being able to call the fraud line themselves, and because I can speak from personal experience that it's great risky business to bring forward concerns to City Hall. Maybe perhaps the culture is changing, but Alderman Weifenbach and I can attest to that it's very uncomfortable to bring forward concerns, and we could speak from personal experience on that can really be a frustrating and trying experience. And so if we're put in a situation where we are asked to bring forward, or a constituent comes to us and brings forward a concern, can we at that point say it's best that you call, especially if it's an employee, it's best that you call the waste and fraud line, or are we then required to bring it to the entire council and mayor?
Jason, I think I can answer this well. Look, under the adopted policy that we currently have, if a council member or a mayor becomes aware of any fraud or theft, they are required to bring that forward to myself and Jason, what's the actual? Can you pull up the policy? Under the adopted policy, they are required to report that currently. Jason?
It would refer to documented loss or theft from the city greater than $10,000, notice of claims greater than $10,000, receipt of written notice of violation from a state or federal agency, receipt of written notice of investigation from a law enforcement agency, and reports from city contracted consultants or governmental agency critical of city management or process. If a council member learned of that information, they would be obligated to notify the rest of the council and the mayor.
And so, Mayor, may I?
Yes, go ahead,
So, Jason, if you don't mind, and you and I have talked about this prior to another meeting, and so I think this is a fair question for me to ask you, is the situation with the landfill that was brought to me in May of 2009, would that situation, the initial beginnings of that situation, fit under the notification policy so that the council would then need to be notified so it could be investigated?
Jason? We're getting a little bit off topic, but go ahead and answer it.
And I'm not sure that I can answer that question as I sit here because I don't remember the exact details that were forwarded at that time, whether there was anything more than just a bare allegation or whether there was documentation of the actual amount of the loss. So I apologize. I just am not comfortable answering that question without a thorough review of all of that material.
Okay, and I agree. I don't know that we want to get too much into the details of that specific situation, but I hope that we will amend this to make sure that all calls in the line come to the council. And I also ask that when I or other council members bring forward concerns, that they be taken seriously. That they be taken seriously. Because Alderman Weifenbach and I were put in a very, very difficult situation, and the situation that we brought forward was not investigated when it should have been. And so I hope that we can look forward and make sure that these issues are addressed, and that we take these concerns seriously and not to shoot the messenger.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. I'm going to make one correction to the record, and that is the fact that when Alderman Quaker presented some information that was actionable to Jason Green, within 2 weeks we had a criminal investigation going forward. And so to make the statement that the action was not taken in a timely manner, and there again, this is my opinion, but I think 2 weeks is certainly timely. With that, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make an amendment that allows for a quarterly update to the councils in its entirety, because I think as any new project moving forward, is the council's going to want to be somewhere in the loop on this to see how things are transpiring. Is there bugs in the system? Is it working? Is it worth the taxpayers' money? So that would be a friendly amendment.
Actually, Mr. Weifenbach, I think that's item number 7.
Oh, okay.
Jason, is that correct?
Oh.
Item number 7, on a quarterly basis, a summary of the number of complaints received and a summary of the disposition shall be provided to the council.
That is number 7, yes.
So I think it's already in there.
Perfect. I must have overlooked it. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? Motion on the floor is approval as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Go to the bids. Number 88. Can you zoom in just a little bit there, Jeff, so we can see the numbers? Thank you.
Okay, the first bid that we have is for a 3/4 ton pickup, 3/4 ton 4x4 pickup truck for the water division, and the staff recommendation is that bid be awarded to McKee Ford for the amount of $21,883.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid to McKee Ford for a grand total of $21,883. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Okay, our next bid is for a project that, on East Talent Street. This is a project on East Talent Street and East Indiana water main reconstruction. The engineer's estimate on this was $366,000. Staff recommendation is to award the bid to Highmark Incorporated for $303,277.65.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid to Highmark, Inc. for a grand total of $303,277.65. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Habcock.
Don't call point or order, but it's Bonnie Peterson's birthday tonight.
I won't call it if she's buying us cake afterwards. Okay, very good. 29 again, right? 39, okay. Further discussion, the motion on the floor is to award the contract to Highmark, Inc. for $303,277.65. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 90.
Item number 90 is an informal quote, and this is for ice sanding material for winter operations. And the informal quote is for $72,500 from Pete Lean and Sons. And I was instructed by Robert Ellis that this is only 50 cents higher than what we paid last year.
Okay, very good. Okay, we have a motion and a second to award. Now, where'd Jason? Do we need to do this as a per unit or a total?
I would prefer per unit.
Okay, very good. So the motion on the floor, if that's all right with the motion maker, is to award the bid for a per unit price of $14.50. Who was the motion maker? Okay, and that was very good. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This may be a little bit off topic, but I wanted to take the opportunity to ask Mr. Ellis a question.
I was going to. You were going to wish Bonnie a
Happy
happy
birthday,
birthday.
Bonnie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and ask, please.
Is it Robert? I know that you've been trying to change some of the mixture of sand, salt to try to accommodate, and I just kind of maybe wanted to see a little bit of an update how that was working for you.
Robert?
We've only had a couple of events this year, rather significant events. One of them was, so, again, our method of operation during snow removal is to apply either magnesium chloride, which is a liquid, sodium chloride, which is a rock salt, and then sand. And that's what this bid award would be for tonight. And what we try to do is apply a sand-salt mixture on the eastern side of town, because we had a lot of curb and gutter and concrete pipe that takes that drainage when it does melt directly to Rapid Creek. So moves very fast in a high concentration of chloride to the creek on the eastern side of town. Western side of town is a little bit different. There's more ditch sections, so the runoff can go into the ditch, soak into the ground. And so on the western side of town, we concentrate more on the sodium and magnesium chloride. To date, this year, have not been notified of any high chloride incidents on Rapid Creek, so it seems to be working. We work with Rapid Valley Sanitary District. They always notify us when they see that spike, because they can taste it in their water system when we do. So I can say over the last 2 years, we went from almost being in violation every snow event to maybe having 2 or 3 incidents where it was slightly high last year. And, our goal this year would be to have no violations, but it's early in the year.
Mr. Mayor, so that kind of answered my second question. So they're following up with you if there's a problem there, or is there a way that, could make a phone call to them just to see if
they continually monitor the chlorides in the creek 24/7. So when they get an alarm in the middle of the night, they notify me.
Thank you.
Very good. Motion on the floor is to award the per unit price of $14.50. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Have nothing under items from the mayor, so we're on to item number 91, which is the St. Joe Investment Group update. Brian, who's going to give this? What we'll do is, if it's all right with the council, we'll go ahead and listen to the update, and if there's any questions, we'll allow for direct questions. Brian, if you'd identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. I am Brian Vulcan, President of Forefront Design and partner in the St. Joe Investment Group. I'm here tonight to report on the status of President's Plaza, the mixed-use facility at the corner of 6th and St. Joe Street. With me tonight are two of my partners for this project, Brad Kurtz from Dean Kurtz Construction and Norman Drake from Legacy Developments of Sioux Falls. Larry Canfield, our fourth partner, fell ill this evening, was not able to attend. To date, this project has had a number of twists and turns, and we thank you for your patience and willingness to work with us for the possibility of making Rapid City downtown better. We've had a great deal of interest from many, many people throughout this community and beyond, and for that we are very grateful. There's been much work done and much more to be done to bring this project to conclusion. We were asked to answer 3 questions tonight. 1, are we going forward with this project? Do we have the financing in place? And what is our schedule, including the construction start date? The answer to the first question is yes, we are moving forward. The project, although not exactly as we first envisioned, is very close to what we originally proposed to the City Council. It will include 20,000 square feet of retail and office space located on the street level, approximately 431 parking spaces, of which 350 will be transferred to the city at a date in the future. We're very happy to report that we will also build 40 downtown loft-style apartments as part of this project. We had considered not including the apartments in the project, but due to the overwhelming response and request by virtually every stakeholder, we found a way to make this possible. Street landscaping and a small plaza also remain part of the project. Financing. We have received a letter of intent to finance from a local bank. We feel we meet all their preconditions and are currently working with them to complete the financing package to bring it towards a closing date. For the timeline, design on the project has already begun. We'd like to execute the land transfer no later than the 15th of March 2011. We expect to close on the loan on or before 30 April 2011, and construction would begin early in the third quarter of 2011, with the building opening in early 2013. With that, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Brian.
Go ahead, please.
Brian, you'd mentioned that there are some changes. Can you just highlight the changes for us?
We originally proposed to have retail space, parking, apartments, and commercial office space on top of the building. We will not have at this point, we're not including commercial office space on top of the building, but we are going to have the apartments, and there is going to be some commercial offices along with the retail space on street level. So it's not a huge change, but it is a minor change.
Thank you.
Tim? Further discussion? Further discussion? If not, I would ask for a motion to acknowledge.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge report. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. So we expect you probably in the next 3 or 4 months, probably next 3 months, to be in talking with our city attorney as far as the land transfer, correct?
I think much sooner than that. Jason and I have already started talking about some of the things that have to happen. I think the city is well positioned to make that happen by the 15th of March. And there's still a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot, but we're moving forward and we're very excited about it.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the report. Item number 92, which is the soccer complex. And this is an update from Soccer Rapid City. Again, ladies, if you would please identify yourself for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Certainly. I'm Joan Martin. This is Helen Pitch. We also have Frank Bettman and other soccer folks here with us this evening. First of all, we'd just like to apologize for not making the last meeting. The reason is we had certain things that we just couldn't get people organized or ourselves here, and we appreciate you reading our letter. At this time, we're going to give you an update in regards to what we've been up to. First of all, I just wanted to go over the structure of Sauk Rapid City with you. It's a 501c3 organization that has Rapid City Youth Soccer, which is the largest organization in the group. You have Rushmore Soccer Club, which is the higher players who get to go on to college and such. Then we have the West River Adult Soccer, and of course then the college team from South Dakota School of Mines. At this time, we have had SRC approved, and we are now putting together a complex executive board. We're looking to have on that board 3 members from Sauk Rapid City, the sports media person, a business person, a banker, financial planner, and an accountant and an attorney. These people will help us oversee our funding for fundraising, for construction, and future management of the complex. Just to briefly go over some of the history that we have going on, or we have lived through, all of us, I think, is that in 2005 we started the 2012 presentations. We had meetings with a mayor-appointed task force that gives us the opportunity to go over 6 sites for a home for the soccer complex. And then at that time, the City Council looked at a Wally Byam appraisal. 2007, Doyle Estes considered donating the land. In 2008, he went ahead and signified that he would donate the land to the city. And again, we went back to the table and went over all of the properties to evaluate them. And at that point, the Estes land was chosen by the City Council. 2010, we have gone into and taken care of the preliminary design, which was completed, and also now the fundraising has started.
I think most of you have seen the design, our preliminary design that we presented back in June. It has 21 full-size fields. I'm not going to go through all of these. 7 fields with lighting for evening play will eventually happen. We will have a permanent concession and vendor stand. We have restroom facilities, gazebos and playgrounds will be centrally located. A stadium to include field, office space, meeting space, a triage and maintenance. That will be in phase 3 of the facility. That stadium will seat 3,500 people, which would allow us to bring nationals to the Rapid City area, and 975 parking spaces, and 8 RV hookups. There will be no overnight camping at the site. One of the things that I didn't talk about is that this site is going to be a very green site. We are trying to implement as many sustainable products as we can at the site, like porous concrete. We're planning on retaining all the water, the drain-off water, in our pond so we can use that for irrigating. And any other recommendations that our architects have given us, we plan to implement into this site, so it's a green site. The complex cost estimates we have revised phase 1 for the 12 fields on the east side of the complex, which would include everything to the right-hand side of the roundabout. We revised that phase 1 to be able to be built for $3.7 million, which is also the amount of the 2012 funds. The phase 2 additional 9 fields would be total infrastructure on the west side of the complex. And in phase 3 would be the stadium building for a total of $10.6 million. Our current financial status, the amount required is $10.6 million. We have 2012 funds of $3.68 million. We have in-kind donations of about $200,000 right now. It's pending, but it's gone through the first level of approval. and we have to date cash donations of $30,000. So we have a remaining of almost $6.7 million to build the complex to completion. We have always presented this complex to be built in phases, and that we would get phase 1 done, and then we would look at phase 2. At this point, we also have pending a donation to build the west side, and as an interim step, that in phase 1, the whole site would be leveled, and phase 1 could be built, and at the same time, phase 2 would be seeded, and the soccer organization has some big gun for irrigation equipment. They have 2 of those big guns, and we could irrigate the west side using those big guns. And then at which time that funds would be available, we could put in the underground sprinkler system and probably do hydro seeding at that point. As we have always stated in the past, that the city will not be responsible for any maintenance of the complex. Our complex maintenance is paid for in the following ways. We have the current player fees generate $144,000. That's how we have it budgeted. We will have the opportunity to have concessions at the new site for every time there's soccer kids out there. Instead of right now, we only have concessions when there's a tournament or a big event. And that income is estimated at $108,000. We have other events planned at the complex, well, Joan will speak on in a bit. And so we have a potential of having $250,000 of income for the maintenance on the complex. Our current expenses are $144,357. Our estimated expenses at the new complex site are $225,000. They are a little higher due to we will be pumping our own water. We will be we have a little more space than we have now that we currently maintain, and we have some buildings, and we'll have our own permanent restrooms eventually to maintain. So our expenses we expect to be higher than they are currently.
As we look at this process of generating funds to keep this complex going, and looking at the complex overall as opportunities for the city to have a greater place to hold different types of events. These are the kinds of things that we've been looking at and have been approached on in regards to the complex usage. We're looking at powwows, concerts, car shows, dog trials, archery tournaments, ultimate frisbee, family reunions, that includes weddings also, of course, festivals, and 3-on-3 basketball tournaments. A number of these things have come to us through people in this community who feel that they need a place in which they can hold these events. So we're very excited about the opportunity for growth at this complex. And again, funding that will come off of those. Capital campaign is something that we're into right now. With the ongoing program, we have approached individuals, and corporations are actively involved in fundraising with them. We have the Saco Rapid City organization has now placed $5 player fees for the complex and all of the fees that we generate from our players. April and May, we will work with the soccer community to raise funds. We have a number of different items that we're going to start doing for fundraising, and asking that the individuals who are using this complex really step forward and help us generate those monies. And June, we look forward to taking the opportunity to bring the kids out there and do a large event where we can ground break and just welcome the whole community out to the property.
So what's our next step? Our consultants, our engineers have told us that before we can go on with construction documents, we need to dig the well to see what kind of water we'll get, if it's potable water, if it's has enough gallons per minute to supply the needs required, and that will also indicate what kind of construction documents will need to be prepared. We have gotten an estimate from Forefront Design for our construction and WIS Associates. For the construction documents would be $406,500, and an estimate to dig the well would be $333,500, which gives us a total of about $740,000 needed at this time. At this point, we'll expect to have the CDs, the well dug and the CDs completed, hopefully by February of 2011. At that point, we would have a firm estimate of cost. Since it takes several months to get through the bidding process with the city, we would need to start that as soon as possible. And so we could bid phase 1 in May or June of 2011 and start construction in the summer of 2011. At this point, I want to bring up our design again, and we would like to ask the council to release the funds for the well and the construction documents so we could get started on this. And during our capital campaign in the next 6 months, we will determine if we will be able to go to bid, to let the bid in May or June for the complex. Are there any questions?
Questions? Any questions? Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, as you know, this has been on the table for a long time, and I'm trying to remember what our original agreement was when we originally accepted this as a 2012 program. Off the top of your head, do you remember what that was?
Yes, we had presented through all of the committees that we would build this in phases, and the committees came back to us. As you remember, in 2005 we had lots of go-arounds with the committees, and they asked that we get phase 1 of our complex down to a size that we could build it with the 2012 funds, that phase 1 could be built with 2012 funds. And then the rest of the building of the complex, the phases would go on from there.
Ron, anything else?
Just one more, Mayor. When you get to, what is your plans if you proceed, if we give you the green light to proceed with phase 1? I mean, what are your plans for phase 2 and phase 3? Is that to come back at a later date in 2012 and ask for funding?
No, sir.
Finish those?
No, sir. We would not, and we would not come back to the council for any more funds. We would have, we have heard from almost everyone that we have approached, and from the majority of the soccer parents that says, if you turn some dirt out there, we'll donate. They want to see something happen. And our capital campaign will continue. And we expect to build the phase 2 and phase 3 from donations.
Okay, thank you.
Additional discussion, questions. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Why are you at this point having a well out there instead of hooking up to city water? Is it more expensive to hook up to city water and put that line out there than it is to build a well at this point?
Yes, it would be much more expensive to bring city water about a mile to the site, and we wouldn't be able to utilize our drain fields. I mean, we just think that it would be a lot cheaper. Our engineers told us it would be cheaper to dig our own well and we would be not having to pay for water over the next 20, 25 years to the city than if we had our own well.
I guess to me that it's like a flood area out there. It's pretty
flat.
Right. But then you're going to have septics and things out there, and I just don't want to have another Green Valley event with wells out there and having people, do you understand what I'm saying? With a flooded area or area that has lots of water, that floods a lot, and then having septic tanks that are being covered in an area that has a lot of water. I guess I'm not understanding the well, and maybe Robert, when they took a look out there, is this something feasible to have wells out there with all the drainage issues and the things that they're having, and hopefully that we don't have another Green Valley event by having the same issues?
Robert?
I think this is a good approach. I think this is the best approach. In my mind, my hope is that the council rethinks that whole issue of putting good treated water on grass for large complexes like this. I think that's a poor choice of how you use your resources. So I commend them for wanting to take well water, untreated water, and use that for irrigation purposes. And I don't think that'll be a problem with any septic systems out there. I think drawing that water out of the groundwater might alleviate and help that water go down and infiltrate into the ground faster. So I don't think there'll be any problems with septic systems out there if they go towards this holding pond that they have planned. Might work better that, I'm not sure if they're planning on drilling a well and filling that pond and then drawing the water out of the pond to irrigate the grass. But I think the option is good.
Okay, I appreciate that, Robert. And you guys have an estimated cost on Phase 1 and what that well and that, a guesstimate of what you're thinking?
Yes, about $3.7 million. The $740,000 to do the well and the construction documents are included in that $3.7 million.
Say the well cost again?
The well cost is about $330,000. That is an estimate because you don't know exactly what a well's going to cost till you start digging. But they have, the engineers compared another well that's been dug in the most recent year, I think, and
In the area.
yeah, in the area in the last year, and this is what the cost is expected. And it will be going into an aquifer, so we won't be draining other people's wells in the area.
Well, basically, you're asking us tonight if you can go ahead with Phase 1, and do we have to make an agreement for the 3.7, Mayor, or what happens if?
Well, what we'd need to do is, if the council chose to move forward, what we'd have to do is put it on a future agenda and run it through as an appropriation.
Okay, is that what you're asking us to do tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
So that would be my request then.
Okay.
Maybe to take it to
unfortunately,
legal and finance or
I can't let you make the motion because you spoke at length ahead of the motion. Sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you.
But I'm sure someone else will probably step up here. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've made myself pretty vocal in that I'm not going to support this project in that area. I think it's a bad place to put these soccer fields. I admire their tenacity and their willingness to keep moving forward. This is the first time, besides the meeting that we've had about the phasing in of this project, it's been 5 years. There's been a request for the Soccer Association to bring money forward. Looking at these numbers, I don't think that that's going to be possible. I think there needs to be some very, very, some sort of liaison position or something to help these ladies achieve this goal. I mean, I admire the tenacity. I don't admire this project being put in that location. I think it's going to be a disaster waiting to happen. I could be wrong, but I want the rest of the council to know I don't support it. I don't support it in that location. I haven't supported it in that location. I think moving it to that location, or even the thought of putting it there, has led to some more confusion on how to get this project done. There's Wally Byam's site that has a lot of resources that are available to it. It has a creek that's right there that we have the water rights to. It's in a floodplain no different than what this is, probably better of a floodplain. The infrastructure's in place. It makes it feasible for it to happen there. And I know that the council at one point voted on it. I think that there's at least 4 new council people here that need some time to digest this whole soccer complex. And I think putting them on the spot tonight to say they want to move forward with it, if they're comfortable with it, I guess that's their own decision. I'm not going to support this in any way, shape, or form moving into that location. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I may state that we realized that there's some new council people that wasn't around when we first went through the 2012 presentations and the last 5 years with you. So we met with the new council people individually and brought them up to speed on the where we've been over the last 5 years and where we're at now.
See, Joan and Helen, just a couple of questions that I had. The $3.7 million, you said about $700,000 of that was between the well and the basically the construction design documents. So that leaves you about $3 million. And that was for 12 fields, correct?
Yes. It would be the 12 fields on the east side
Right.
or on the right.
I guess where I got a little bit confused was, so you're talking $3 million, which is going to get you 12 fields. Does it also build you the parking and also the restrooms that you need?
It does build the parking, and at this time, the permanent restrooms, the 2 permanent restrooms on that side are alternates that we would like to include as alternates on bidding phase 1.
Okay. I guess where the confusion came in was, I'm seeing $3 million for 12 fields and some parking, but in your presentation, I thought I had saw that there were some additional fields, and that was, dollar amount was almost $5 million?
Yes, that's because we are not building the complete roundabout and the other 2 parking lots and irrigating, doing any infrastructure whatsoever on the other side, on the west side.
Okay.
So that building the roundabout and all the infrastructure into that is where that cost goes up.
And how many fields were proposed in phase 2?
9.
9. So that gets you to 21 fields?
Correct.
Okay. Was it originally proposed for 24 fields? Or was it always been 21?
It was 25 fields.
Okay.
But with this design, we have all but the stadium field. The stadium field is larger, so we could hold international events in the stadium. The rest of the fields are a regulation size field, and when we have large tournaments, some fields will be made smaller for the younger kids. And so at any one time, a configuration could be 25 fields on this site.
Very good. Thank you. We do have a light from Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was a little confused, too, about the less for more money. And thank you so much for all the hard work you've been doing. I'm still a little confused about the bathrooms being alternate, as in they're not part of the plan, like they're going to be an alternate plan if you can afford them, or how's that going to work?
The restrooms
In phase 1.
The restrooms are an alternate in phase 1, and an alternate in this case is what we're meaning is that we have the specs for phase 1 could come to 3.7 million, but when we actually let the bid, we will have alternates. We'll have them also build the restrooms, and if the overall bid comes in less than 3.7, and then the restrooms could be built, because the 3.7 is a guesstimate. And the way construction has been in the Rapid City area lately is there's been a lot more people bidding each job, and it's been very competitive.
So then, in the phase 1, then would you use porta potties?
Yes.
Is
And
that
soccer players are used to porta potties.
okay? And I guess I have some concerns with the amount of money, because it sounds, hopefully you get a real competitive bid, but at the same time, you could, spend $750,000 and to find out that it's going to be priced out of the, the 3.7 million. And so I have a concern about that.
Well, we would hope to have We have started getting in-kind, like we talked about. It's pending, but it's been through the first process, that we have all of the cement donated for the complex, which is over $200,000. And we are just going into our biggest phase of our capital campaign, and we would hope that we would have money generated from the soccer organizations to pick up any shortfall that may happen with the bidding process, and the difference between what the actual bid will be compared with our estimate.
And that phase 1 is all of the parking you need for all of those fields?
Yes, that
Put in
covers,
that.
it covers, I don't think there's any way for me to show you. The parking lot that runs north and south on the top, the one that runs north and south on the south side, and the one that runs east and west on the very bottom right-hand corner.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion, let's go to Alderman Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ladies, it's a great plan. It's a beautiful plan, and theoretically probably be very great for the city. But the one question that I keep coming back to is, in the last 5 years, there's been no activity on fundraising. And tonight, you're telling us that we've got a capital campaign that's going forward, and that we're really moving right along with it. Convince me. Tell
Well,
me
I
what
think-
we're doing, because right now I'm in this place where all I'm seeing is what I've seen for the last 5 years, and I'm not convinced that I'm seeing anything other than the same inactivity that has happened. So give me some confidence that I don't have right now. That tell me how you're going to raise that money. Tell me what the capital campaign is. Give me some idea of how it's going to be different than what it's been. Tell me how the two groups are going to work together. You know, give me something positive here.
Well, in regards to the two groups that you're referring to, I think you're talking about the two soccer organizations?
Yes.
Yes, well, they have come together, and what they've done is assigned an executive committee under our hospice that will designate the work that needs to be done in fundraising and such. And we will have people from both of those soccer organizations on board with that executive committee. So I think that we have seen strides that way. You know, when you have competitive people out there running competitive soccer organizations, they're working for their kids, but they're all on the same plate. They're working together to see this happen. They feel very strongly about what's happening with this soccer complex, and they want to see it come to attrition. In regards to what we've done in the last 5 years, I think we gave you some history in regards to the land issues, and that had to be when we approached people in the beginning and talked to them in regards to fundraising, we had many closed doors. And what we kept hearing was that until you have land and the city's on board with this, we'll just wait. We're going to sit tight until we hear that the city's given you a piece of land. All right, so now we have this piece of land, and we are going after the fundraising. It's a long and arduous process when you're talking to our corporations in this city, when you're talking to organizations in this city, to make them understand on something that's so big and really a very powerful piece of property for the city of Rapid City, what's their worth in it? Okay, so that's what we're doing, is we're now talking to these people again and saying, look, the city's on board, the soccer people are on board, and now we need you to help us make this become a reality. And they're coming. We have a lot. We've been visiting with people, and we've had a lot of very, very positive response. So we hope next time that we come in front of you, you'll hear even greater stories that we have to bring to you in regards to what the city has, you know, our other citizens have done for this.
Okay, Mr. Davis, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. 5 years ago, you also had made some proposals that there were some very major grants available. My memory was that Soccer USA was one of the grant providers. Are those grants still available, and were grant applications ever made?
Actually, again, the same scenario. When you apply for those grants, you have to have that piece of land. And at those points, we did not have the piece of land, so we really had to put everything tabled. And as you know, grants have been very difficult to get. Does that mean we're going to stop looking at the grants and trying to reach greater dollars out of grants? No. We certainly have a list of organizations that we're going to approach as far as the grants.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Further discussion? Yours isn't working? Let me ask the question. Does anyone wish to speak before Alderwoman Hadcock speaks for a second time? So let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move to place this item on the Legal and Finance agenda for further discussion and consideration.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move this to Legal and Finance for further discussion. Any discussion on that motion?
No.
Deb, did you have anything else? Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. What is she doing? Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
That gets us through item number 92. Item number 93, which is a Vision 2012 update. Robert, were there any changes?
No new changes, so I don't have anything to report.
Okay, if there is an attachment, I guess the chair just look for a motion to acknowledge. Second. Okay, we have a motion and second to acknowledge. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Let's see, that does take us to the public hearing items. These are items 94 through 197 inclusive. Items 94 through 197 inclusive. Chair would ask for a motion to open the public comment period on items 94 through 197, please. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We are in the public comment period. We do have a couple speaker request forms. The first one, Bob, thank you for hanging out with us. Bob Haskell, item 191. Nice to see you.
Nice to be seen.
Bob, if you'd identify yourself for the record.
I want to thank you for your patience and your indulgence. And November 15th, I believe I was here and made some comments regarding one of the pieces of property in our area that they wanted to rezone. And after further review, I would like to say that the gals at planning and zoning, or whatever you folks call it, I think they're on the right track. And I want to go on the record to say that I now wish to support what they're trying to do. I think it'll make an improvement in our area, providing that guy does what they tell him to do. And I think that he'll have to. So I wish him luck, because we need all the help we can get. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for staying, Bob. And Bob is referring to item 191 on the agenda. Bob, thank you for staying with us. We also have a Hugh Martin, item 193. There again, Mr. Martin, if you would please identify yourself, then the floor is yours. And if you just watch the lights, you'll have 3 minutes as soon as you start.
I'm Hugh Martin, 2818 South Valley Drive. I'm kind of concerned about this rezoning to, I guess it's called a flood hazardous district, or flood hazard, or whatever. I'm not real sure what all that pertains to. I know that I've been approached at one of the meetings about selling my property, and I've been there 35 years. I know the house, our home, was built in '52, so it's went through about 58 years of not getting taken away, and it hasn't been bothered by the '72 flood. And I'm not real sure if this rezoning is to put the squeeze on us to sell, or what's going on. But I just reading a few of the things in there. If it's destroyed more than 50% of the home, you can't rebuild it. And I see there it says no camping, no camper. I don't know if this means I can't put it in a commercial place where you can camp, or my kids can't go out in the yard anymore, or my great-grandkids can't go out there and camp in the backyard, or what's going on there. But, you know, it does bother me, and I don't know if this is coming around to the point of being able to take the eminent domain and take my property from me, or what's going on. I realize the government has better use for our property than we do, but how you put a value on what you've done in 35 years, I don't know how you can do that. We've got trees there we planted from saplings that's 50 foot tall. How do you put a value on that? How do you put a value on raising your children there, your grandchildren, and now your great-grandchildren? You know, I mean, it's something that concerns me, but I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. And then I did have a speaker request from Brad Barnes, but it says only questions dealing with item 197. So as we get to item 197, if we do have any questions, we do have someone in the audience. With that, I do not have any additional speaker request forms, and there again, we are dealing with items 94 through 197 inclusive. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to any of these items? If not, we will move on. Please keep in mind we do leave the public comment period open during this portion of the agenda. With that, I will ask staff and the council if we want to pull any of the items. Let's see. First, we're going to start with the continued public hearing consent items 94 through 96. Do we need to have any of those pulled, Marcia? Okay. How about from the council? If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the continued public hearing consent items 94 through 96 inclusive. We have a motion and a second. Charlene, did you get all that? Okay, thank you. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the continued public hearing consent items. Chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing items 94 through 197 inclusive. We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to the consent public hearing items. These are items 97 through item 190 inclusive. And the chair would ask if any of those need to be polled. I did have a note here from Jeff that we need to poll 100, 101, and 102. Is that correct? Okay. Any others that need to be polled? And there again, we're dealing with items 97 through 190. Marcia, did you have anything else to poll? Okay, anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. Was this 97 that the first gentleman spoke about?
That was item 193.
That was the one.
Oh, I'm sorry. The first gentleman was 191. And those are not on the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you.
So, matter of fact, all three of the speaker requests, it was 191, 193, and 197. Those are taken up individually after the consent calendar. Okay? Any further items to be polled? At this point, I see no further lights. The chair would ask for a motion to approve the consent public hearing items 97 through 190 inclusive, with the exception of items 100, 101, and 102. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 100, let's see, alcohol licenses. Deb, I believe that would be you. Jeff, what's our recommendation on all three of these? Okay. So we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal on items 100, 101, and 102. And we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Well, that chopped the agenda in half. Okay, that takes us to item 100. Let's see, 191. Marcia?
You know, me read it first?
Yes, go ahead, please.
191 is second reading of ordinance number 5693, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to medium-density residential district located northeast corner of South Valley Drive and Orchard Lane. I move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval, dealing with item 191 here. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. Marcia, I think you already answered this on one of the previous ones, but my question would be, if one of the mobile, this is going to allow the ability to have larger mobile homes and stuff in this one also, correct?
If you ultimately approve the related mobile home ordinances that we talked about and you sent back to committee,
Right.
then someone could come in and move in a new mobile home, as long as they met the clearance, they could put a larger one on in existing space. And you can see on the aerial there the general locations of those spaces.
Now, my last question would be is if one of those existing mobile homes there, let's say someone wanted to replace their existing mobile home with another, would they have to get a conditional use permit to do that?
Marcia?
If they replace it with the same size or smaller, they would not. If we approve those amendments that we talked about earlier, they could actually replace it with a larger one. But if they went in and took that large open area there and they wanted to put additional spaces there, at that point in time, that would trigger the need to do a conditional use permit.
Okay, but it will not. It really will not affect the existing mobile homes that are there today, where they would have to have a conditional use permit, except if they increase the size.
Under the rules today, if they increase the size, they would need to get a conditional use permit. If we adopt the changes to the rules that we talked about earlier tonight, that would actually allow them to put larger units on.
Thank you, Marcia.
Okay, further discussion. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have another question for Marcia.
Go ahead, please.
Marcia, is this, the gentleman spoke earlier that the people would do what you told them to do, and I was just wanting to make sure that that was going to be part of this.
Correct. That Mr. Haskell, who spoke, his property is here. He and at least two, maybe not three, other property owners from the area have expressed concerns. They'd like to see the existing mobile homes in this area upgraded to a little better quality, to be improved with newer units. But they are concerned that if there was additional development in this area, a number of additional units, that the roads are not designed to take the increase in traffic and the like. So what they've told staff is that they're happy to see what's in place upgraded, but if somebody came in to expand the park and put additional units in there, they would want the opportunity to have some input into that process.
Anything else? Very good. Let's go to Deputy. Do you want to talk? Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 192, please.
192 is the second reading of ordinance number 5694, and ordinance amending section 17.06 of the Chapter 17 of Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City, rezoning from General Agricultural District to Flood Hazard District located south of Orchard Lane, east of Melody Lane, and west of Elkvale Road. Oh, move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weidenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Marcia.
Go ahead, please.
Is this the same particular area that this gentleman came to talk about earlier, that was up at the podium?
Marcia?
I think he's related to the one
193.
Of the 193. If I could, Mayor, I just want to make you aware, this is property owned by the City of Rapid City. It is in the hydraulic floodway. In accordance with your policy, adopted policy, this is being rezoned. There may be a small portion of this that's isolated along the roadway that is also a 100-year floodplain, but because it has no access, the Future Land Use Committee recommended it be zoned floodway.
So this is actually 192. This is property that's owned by the City of Rapid City.
Part of the Light of Life estate that the city has purchased.
Okay, very good.
This like adjoins like by the Wally Byam site, or?
It's actually the portion of the Wally Byam site that is split by the southeast connector.
Okay. I have some concern when this next item comes up, so if
Okay.
I'll yield. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you. So this is not the portion that we've been considering selling?
No, the portion that you've been considering selling is further to the north, outside the hydraulic floodway.
So what's the need for us to rezone this now?
Marcia?
Your floodplain development policy says that the appropriate zoning for this would be flood hazard. So it's being done in conjunction with your policy that you've adopted.
And when was that adopted?
Marcia?
Year and a half ago in the summer, June 9th, July 2008.
Don't tell me you really know the date, do you?
No, it's the date of the flood is when the public hearing was.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
anything else? Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Yes, Marcia, I know it's on 193, but a description of flood hazard on this for the man that's in the audience and some of those questions to be answered, so he's aware of what's happening with the property there.
Why don't you go and give us definition of flood hazard as that is applicable to the next two items?
If I might just do it a little broader, this area was in the county. In approximately 1984, the county adopted flood regulations, what I would refer to as the FEMA regulations. It's similar to what we have in Chapter 15. And again, those are the standards that talk about the hydraulic floodway, the 100-year floodplain, and the 500-year floodplain. So that's been in that category, and the use of those properties has been restricted by the county, similar to the city, since the mid-'80s. In addition to that, the city has chosen to also zone those areas as flood hazard. It requires that you have a conditional use permit anytime you have a structure. It does significantly limit the number or the types of uses that are allowed in that area. But the overwhelming limitation is that comes forward from the Chapter 15 regulations. It's felt that the flood hazard standards actually give more notice to folks so that someone doesn't inadvertently purchase that property not realizing that they're restricted by what I refer to as the FEMA flood regs.
Thank you. So Mr. Martin can continue living and doing the things he has done before. He can't like add camping or something on there, but what he's done in the past, he's allowed to do, am I correct? If it's by those standards that were already adopted by the county. We aren't changing his use in that sense.
The FEMA flood regulations, whether it was in the county under their version, in the city's version, there's really only a few slight differences. The city has a little bit higher standard. If you move a new building into a 100-year floodplain, has to be elevated. But in the floodway, basically the regulations are the same. They don't allow new structures. Now, the difficulty in this area, and when we talk about one of the next items here, is there are existing manufactured homes down in that area, and they cannot replace those. If they are damaged by more than 50%, they can't be replaced. There's a limitation on the improvements that can be made to those. You can't do more than 50% of the improvements. That becomes a substantial improvement and is not allowed. But those are standards that are coming from the FEMA regulations. The use of the property is more restrictive in the flood hazard, but really what's going to keep people from reusing these properties is the FEMA standards.
Thank you, Marcia. Mr. Martin, maybe you could contact Marcia to get more information on what those uses and how flood hazard works for the city as well. And hopefully you have an understanding of what she just said. Can I ask him a question?
Why don't we wait till we get to the item?
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
I
right.
apologize. Thank you for bringing that forward and saying what you said, Marcia.
Thank you. We're dealing with item number 192, which is second reading of ordinance number 5694. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 193.
193 is second reading of ordinance number 5696, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to flood hazard district, located west of Elkville Road, east of South Valley Drive, between Orchard Lane and Scott Street. I move approval.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Hadcock, did you want to ask your question now?
Yes. Mr. Martin, did you have an understanding of what Marcia was talking about on the differences between what the county regs were before and the use of your property coming into the city at this point, sir.
To a certain extent.
Mr. Martin, could I ask you a favor? Could you actually come up to the microphone so we could all hear, and also it'll be recorded? My apologies, but we try to get people up to the mic so everybody can actually hear and it can be recorded. Thank you, sir.
To a certain extent, I understand some of it, but I'm definitely not into the laws that pertain to flooding and flood hazards and all of them things. I just know that my kids, my grandkids, and now my great-granddaughters, they'd like to camp out in my backyard once in a while overnight. And I don't know if this, when it says no camping, if that means a commercial camp that you're putting in, or that I got to tell my kids they cannot go out and set up a tent, that I'm going against regulation. Now, I have no problem with, I'm knowing it's a no use, and so no use means no use. I can't change anything as far as structural, but I'd like to find out if they're going to put the squeeze on me to try to sell or trying to take my property or what's going on. I would like to understand that. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Martin. Maybe Marcia can give you an understanding of what you said. If I'm correct, it seems like he can have his kids camping out the back. It just depends.
Marcia?
That kind of
You wanna
camping is
explain
or
it,
something.
Technically, under the ordinance, camping is not allowed. And again, the concern is because of the safety issues. The only place I've ever seen that enforced, we don't go out looking for somebody camping their kids in the backyard. The only place I've seen that enforced is in the early 90s along the fairgrounds, where there was an organized effort to bring people in to pitch tents there during some of the motorcycle rallies, and that became an issue at that time. Fairgrounds moved the campground out of the floodway so that we wouldn't have that problem.
Thank you, Marcia.
Deb, anything else?
Is there anything that we haven't addressed, Mr. Martin, that you still don't have an understanding, or maybe it's easier for you to get with Marcia and have her visit with you on some of the standards or some of her staff members?
Mr. Martin?
There isn't anything else right now I'd like to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, for coming forward.
Thank you, sir. Marcia?
I do want to make the council aware, the Future Land Use Committee asked that we go out and meet with folks, so we did have a public meeting out in this area, invited every single landowner in this area. I believe this gentleman was at the meeting, if I recall correctly. There were a handful of people that were very upset, and I want you to be aware of that, because they are limited in the use of their property. There was at least one individual who had recently purchased property and was concerned because they didn't realize that. We've been approached by several of those individuals who would like the city to purchase the property. There is no funding source identified at this point in time. The flood policy that was adopted and those updates that were adopted about a year and a half ago and the East Greenway Master Plan contemplate that, but there's no program in place now. So I want you to be aware that there are people here who are severely restricted. The units, particularly the mobile homes, are in many cases in poor condition, and they can't do improvements because of the FEMA flood regs.
Marcia, is it fair to say that they were restricted before?
Yes,
And-
that's been in place since the mid-'80s in the county.
Okay. Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there an alternative to this zoning, flood hazard district?
Marcia?
The property could be rezoned to mobile home residential or to low-density residential, but again, the FEMA standards would still be in place.
But the FEMA standard would be less restrictive than what the city standard is?
Marcia?
There are some differences. The most restrictive is the FEMA standard.
Because I can't understand why you could live in a mobile home on this property, but you can't camp. I mean, those types of things. But I see what's happening. This is a blanket rule for everything, and in some places this doesn't fit. It seems like we've wreaked a lot of havoc over there in that South Valley area so far, in the Melody Acres area. And it continues, but if there's if it's in a floodplain and there's an alternative, the properties, Mr. Chair, would that be you, Mr. Kroger? I'm sorry, I should be. My question is the Lemon Street houses that are in the floodplain, are they also designated flood district or flood hazard?
Marcia?
I believe there's some differences. These are in the hydraulic floodway. These are not in the 100-year floodplain. So the area in the yellow is the area where there would be fast-moving water in a flood event. My understanding of the Lemon Street area is that it's 100-year floodplain, where you can put structures if you elevate it and anchor it so as to protect property and people. This is the area where no new construction is allowed, no substantial improvements.
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess, so with adding this flood hazard district doesn't restrict it any more than if it was mobile home residential?
Marcia?
It restricts it differently. There's a different list of permitted uses, but the bottom line is you can't put a new manufactured home in this, whether it's zoned mobile home residential or if it's zoned flood hazard, because of the FEMA flood regs.
Mr. Chair, why did we take flood hazard for this zoning? Why is it?
Because the adopted policy that this council has approved says that we will take hydraulic floodway and we will zone it flood hazard, whether it's publicly or privately owned. So that's the policy that you've given us to proceed with these applications.
Mr. Wavenbach, any other questions?
I just think we wreaked a lot of havoc over there in that area and partly my fault for not understanding all these particular regulations that I understand when we do have meetings, but I mean, there's a lot of times they go over my head, so I can't imagine why they wouldn't go over Mr. Martin's head also with some of these regulations and the concerns that he has. I'll yield to, I see there's several other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go to Alderman Quaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to offer a substitute motion to continue this item to the second Public Works meeting in January. And then if I get a second, I'll explain what I'm thinking.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this item to the second Public Works.
We've considered ordinances at Public Works before.
Jason, can they consider ordinances, or by our own rules? I thought all ordinances and appropriations had to go through legal and finance.
They do, and the requirement is that legal and finance approve them. And I believe Mr. Quaker is right. I can think of one instance where they actually did refer one to Public Works. It's not the usual practice, though.
Okay.
It's not the usual jurisdiction of that committee.
Okay, very good.
Mayor, if I might.
Yes.
If you could possibly continue it to the council meeting and ask that it stop off at the committee level. This is an advertised public hearing. If it is not continued to a date specific at a council meeting, we'll have to renotice and republish.
That's if it's all right with the seconder, the intent then is to take to the second council meeting in January with a stop off at the prior Public Works meeting.
Why don't you go to both committees? You don't have to.
So,
okay.
And then I'd like to make a few comments. I think I owe an explanation as to why I've offered this motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's continue this for two items and actually have it stop off at Public Works. Let's go back to Alderman Sam Quaker.
And by the way, I am okay if somebody wants, if legal and finance wants it to, I would certainly accept that as a friendly amendment. Here's the several items that I think need to be addressed in the intervening time. Number one is, as I heard from Mr. Martin, that this area did not flood in 1972, and I need to understand that if this area didn't flood in first of all, I need to understand if it did or it didn't, but I'd like to know what flooded, and if this didn't flood in 1972, I'd like to understand why FEMA then would determine this to be hydraulic floodway, because if it didn't flood in 1972, then how could it then flood? I don't need an answer tonight, but by then I would like one. The second is I need to understand if there's homes in there or if they're all trailer houses or a combination. I don't know if Mr. Martin's residence is a trailer house or a home, but again, it seems like we're doing a one-size-fits-all on this entire 31 acres, and this is a big decision because we are taking away the ability to get any sort of building permit to redo a deck, to redo a window. You will not be able to get a building permit, in my understanding, if this passes. And so I'd encourage this council to support the motion to continue so that we can fully vet this. And I'd like to make sure that the property owners know that this is going to be at that Public Works and council meeting, so that we can hear from them if it didn't work for them to attend tonight. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and second on the floor. For the discussion, let's go to Gary Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think my comments I was going to make are going to be pertinent maybe to this motion, but I just want to make sure, Hugh and I go back a long time, that Hugh knows that if you don't understand what's going on, Hugh, give me a call. Give Marcia a call. We'll help you get all your questions answered, and that it's hard for you, I know, to get up and down with your legs and your hips and that now. So you got my number. You should have the number for Marcia. If you don't, before you leave from here, get that, please, so we can get all your questions answered, because nobody's going to come out and try and chase your grandkids out of a tent and that with this. But make sure you get all your questions answered. Give me a call. I'll help you with it. Marcia will help you with it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to tell the gentleman also that I don't believe the city has any interest in taking your property. And again, to get out there and camp with your grandkids, too. Thanks.
Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I supported the continuance for, I want to make sure that we can understand the differences of what's going to change here. So if we can have the rules under FEMA and the rules under this flood hazard district, so we can have them side by side, so we can understand them at the Public Works and at the next council meeting. If we can, I guess I would offer that was the reason I supported the continuance, so we could make sure that we're only cutting this board once.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Maybe I'm just frustrated. This is second reading on this issue. I appreciate Mr. Martin bringing this forward, and I think his concerns can be met, and I think this is not going to change anything. You can continue this, but it's not, in a sense, going to help him, because we're still going to get his questions answered. We're going to do what we need to do. We're continuing things on these agendas, and we wonder why our agendas are long. It gets frustrating sometimes when you're on second reading or first reading. We're doing the opposite of what we should be doing. First reading is when you ask the questions. Second reading is when you got your questions answered. In this case, Mr. Martin brought his forward, and I understand those concerns, that we need to take care of this man and anybody else that asks those questions. But these guys had worked on this for a reason. If you don't have those understandings, maybe ask those at first reading, because we're doing the opposite. We're having staff do extra work, in a sense, on issues that I think we're not getting how first and second reading are working. So I know some people are new, and I understand that. Some people have been here for a while, and they're continuing some of this stuff, and it seems like it's frustrating to me, because we're doing the opposite of what we should do on an agenda. It's not the concerns of the citizens that I have a problem with. It's doing the work beforehand on some of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess, given that I am new and I would like a little clarification on something earlier, and if I may, I'd like to ask Alderwoman Hadcock a quick question.
You can, but please keep in mind the motion is motion to continue. So if it's in reference to why we want to continue it, you absolutely can ask the question.
Yeah, it's in particular in the context of the fact that this is a second reading, and I guess I'm just trying to understand. Previously tonight, Alderwoman Hadcock, there was a first reading that we forwarded on, and there was an issue with that, and this is a second reading. And so I'm confused. If you could just clarify, when we should be asking questions or when we shouldn't, I guess that would be helpful for me and maybe for others. Thank you.
Did you wish to answer the question?
It's not the questions that I have issues with. It's on some of this stuff, if you've looked at what these mean, first reading is to get the questions and have the staff do the work. It's just easier in the process for them to figure things out than to come back on second reading, continue it on issues that some of this, she just said, the county is not changing anything. FEMA is making these issues so we can't change them. So all we have to do is explain to Mr. Martin how that process works, instead of continuing on an agenda where, at this point, it doesn't make sense. It's going to come back the same way. Asking questions is fine, but this will stay the same, and you can get your questions answered, and so can, without continuing it. I guess that's the issue. It's not the questions on people. It's some of this stuff is just, you should know some of these things, but I didn't say everybody's supposed to know everything. I think it was explained very clearly tonight on what the issue is, and there's a lot of continuances on stuff that seems pretty cut and dry on things that we should be listening to our staff as well.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue this for 2 weeks and have it routed through Public Works. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not here to frustrate anybody by continuing it. I think that there's an alternative that we should consider, and I think I outlined that when I asked the question, but can someone tell me when the first reading was?
Marcia, do you have the date?
Not off the top of my head.
Was it like the last council meeting or the?
Typically, it would have been.
I don't think I was here, so, I mean, I'm not trying to frustrate anybody, and I think that there's an alternative here that we need to explore. And if we pass this, and then it's passed, and then we've tried to back these things up before, so I'm not sure when we ask the questions, but I think it's appropriate for Mr. Martin. It's a big deal on him. If it was my house, I'd appreciate the opportunity to make sure we cut the board once. Thanks.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue this item, route it through Public Works. Any further discussion? Seeing no additional lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 194, please. 194, please. Deb? Nope, we just did 193, so 194.
Thank you, Mr. Hanks. 194 is second reading of ordinance number 5697, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City from rezoning from mobile home residential district to flood hazard district, located west of Elkville Road and east of South Valley Drive between Melody Lane and Scott Street. And I would yield the floor.
My suggestion would be that you would continue this along with the other item. It's very similar, and it's an adjacent area.
Thank you. I move to continue, please.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to continue this for 2 weeks to the next city council meeting. Any further discussion on that motion?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. Your light's working now.
I guess this was an example that I had an issue with and read it. Came back, called the staff, and asked if they could continue this if we had any issues with that. So I appreciate that, Marcia, and I will continue to work with you, and we can figure this out.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification on the motion. I believe the last item was actually continued to the second meeting in January with a stop at Public Works. Is that the intent, or is it a 2-week continuance intended here?
Marcia? January?
If we do these together, I think they're companion items. So the second meeting in January, stop off at Public Works would be great.
Okay. Further discussion? Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 195, please.
195 is second reading of ordinance number 5698, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, zoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City, rezoning from no-use district to low-density residential district, located south of Melody Lane, north of Terrace Street, and east of South Valley Drive. And I move to continue till January 12th, I think it was.
Marcia, is this considered a companion piece, or can we approve this one?
Actually, it's in the same area. However, there are 2 stick-built homes on these. I know the one appears to be a mobile home in the aerial, but that's just the shading of the roof. Our understanding is that the property owner is in agreement with this, and again, it's to rezone it to LDR, and they are stick-built homes.
Okay, so I changed it to move approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did we have a second? We have a motion and second for approval. We're dealing with second reading of ordinance number 5698, item 195 on the agenda. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 196, please.
Okay. Is the second reading of ordinance number 5699, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to low-density residential district located south of Orchard Lane, east of South Valley Drive, north of Melody Lane, and west of Elkville Road. Marcia?
Again, the recommendation for his approval of this is going from no use to low-density residential. I did review it with staff this afternoon. My understanding, these are all stick-built homes along the south side of Orchard.
So I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, there was a- oh, okay, thank you. Opposed? Just want to make sure everyone is awake. Motion passes. Item 197, please.
Second.
Sure, go ahead.
Item 197 is a request by Chamberlain Architects for Destination Rapid City revocation of right-of-way for a portion of alley right-of-way adjacent to several lots located near 502, 508, 510, and 512 Main Street. Recommendation is for approval, and that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion dealing with item 197, vacation of right-of-way? Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. The bill list. Oh, did you want to have a discussion before the bill list? Okay.
Can you the document camera?
Yep. The original amount of the bill list that you were looking at needs 3 additions. We have an addition to Highmark Incorporated for $1,654.70. An addition to Quinn Construction Incorporated for $7,766.25. An addition to Siteworks Specialists Incorporated for $4,122.15, which brings the grand total of the bill list to $10,769,060.41.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a motion and a second for approval to the amended bill list, which now totals $10,769,060.41. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 hopefully quick observations and questions. The first is on page 1. It's V as in Victor 0035575. It's a subscription to the Sioux Falls Argus Leader for $399, and I don't have anything against the Argus Leader. I used to be an avid reader when I lived East River, but I'm wondering what the reasoning is for us paying for a subscription to the Argus Leader. I also check up to see what Sioux Falls is doing, but I've been able to find that information online. So I'm just wondering if there's a necessity to spend $400 on a subscription to the Argus.
I guess, Alderman Quaker, at this point, I don't know the details on who that's for or what that is used for.
Yeah, it's Cost Center 0101, so it's the Mayor and Council Cost Center. So I can get an answer at a later time because I
can answer. In the past, we've actually had the Argus Leader that we paid for, and we were up for renewal, and I told them not to renew it. And so, not sure why it's on there.
Okay, we can certainly look into that.
And then secondly, On page 2, I see that somebody took, there was a trip taken to Pier, and it was $126.91 was spent in gas. To me, it seems that it would be better to use city vehicles whenever possible rather than personal vehicles. Just an observation, maybe there was a perfectly good reason as to why a personal vehicle was taken that day. Or maybe that's what happened and I just misread it, but I wanted to share that observation. But most importantly, I wanted to direct the council's attention to page 69. Starting on page 69 and going to 72 and a half, there are more than 4.5 pages of purchases from Amazon.com. And now I apologize to Greta Chapman for not bringing this up in advance to her. I just noticed this tonight. And so perhaps that these items are so specialized that Amazon is the only place that they can be purchased. But it would be great, knowing that we have Borders and that we have other retailers here who've invested brick and mortar in our community and are hiring employees in our community. It would be great if we could try to keep the business local rather than simply going online only when we need to go online as a city, because we've all sat in on budget discussions and we all know the impact of online purchases and sales tax, and so we can also lead by example by trying to keep the business local. So again, I'll qualify my statements by saying I haven't had a chance to talk to Greta in advance. I just noticed this tonight, and maybe there's a reason why maybe none of those items could be purchased locally or through Borders, but it just seems that we should shop first with the retailers that are investing in our community by hiring people in our community.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval as amended for the $10,769,060.41. And we will check on the Argus later and see if that's actually coming out of the mayor's and city council line item. I don't know why it would, but
Okay.
if it is, we won't process the order.
I'll make a note to check on that.
Okay, very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Green.
We do need an executive session for the purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2.
Okay, do we have a motion, please? We have a motion second to go into executive session for the purposes permitted by SDCL-1-25-2. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We are in executive session. Okay, can we get a motion come out of executive session? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Green, do
Thank
we
you,
have
Mayor.
just
I
one
believe you
item?
have one item remaining on your agenda. That's the action on the contract with the IAFF. I recommend that the council move to impose the contract with the deletions discussed in the executive session.
Could we have a motion, please? Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to impose the contract less the deletions that you're recommending. Is that correct? Discussions on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
The motion on the floor is with the deletions or without the deletions?
With the deletions, is
With
my
the
understanding.
deletions. I'll offer a substitute motion to impose without the deletions.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. We're back to the original motion.
I'd like to.
Okay, discussion on the original motion. Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you. I owe an explanation as to why I offered that motion. I think imposition with the deletions essentially turns our frontline firefighters into, they're basically, in essence, no longer union employees, and I think that it's going to be a cold. I think that this is an unnecessarily harsh step, and I think we should give the firefighters union a chance to respond before we impose and basically remove all of the grievance, basically removing the grievance procedures, removing just cause actions, and basically, in essence, it could be argued that this breaks up the union, and I think that this is unnecessary hardball, and we ought to first give a chance for the firefighters to respond before going down this road. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Jason, can you give us a brief explanation at this point? What is our alternatives? Because it's not like we're all not wanting to take care of our firefighters and our employees at Rapid City. There just comes to a point that we got to have some type of movement forward, and so nobody, I don't think here, is trying to do anything to these firefighters that in the future would, say that they are not doing their job or taking out their union or doing any such thing. I think if you could just give us a brief explanation, Jason, please.
Let's go to Jason Green, and also please go into detail as far as the grievance. I think there was a misstatement as far as grievances going on.
Yes, there were a couple things that definitely need to be rectified. This in no way impairs any firefighter's status as a union employee or their right to representation by the union. The union will continue to exist, and the city will continue to have an obligation to negotiate in good faith when those times arise. So the union will continue to represent those employees. In addition, the grievance procedure is fully intact in the contract that the city council will impose today. The grievance procedure is not being altered in any way. With regard to the process, I believe that the council is well aware that negotiations have been ongoing for some time. We reached impasse with the firefighters. We went to conciliation. We were unable to reach an agreement through conciliation. We then went to fact-finding with the Department of Labor, and the Department of Labor has issued its report on that matter. At this point, the council is in the position where I believe it's required to impose its last best offer, either in whole or in part. In addition, the day that the report came out, I contacted the representative for the firefighters and informed him that if the firefighters union had signed the contract, I would be recommending the contract in full without any deletions. I spoke with him again this afternoon. He indicated to me that he'd relayed that information to the union. The union has not been in to sign the contract. Therefore, my recommendation is to impose the contract with these certain items deleted, because at the end of the day, the unions that have negotiated with the city, that have come to an agreement, deserve the full benefit of that. And frankly, we haven't been able to reach agreement in this instance with the firefighters. The city taxpayers' interest needs to come first.
Thank you, and that's the bottom line for, I think, most people on this council today is the taxpayers and how we can get the best interests of them taken care of today. So I believe the process is working. I hope we can find a solution with the firefighters. And the bottom line is, I think this is where we need to go, and hopefully we can find that solution. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Bonnie Peterson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say this is not union busting. We support our unions, and they've had 3 weeks to come and sign the agreement. And at some point, we have to impose, because that's, I believe, is our obligation to do so. So they've kind of forced our hands. They also have the freedom to come back to us for future negotiations. And it's unfortunate that it's come to this, but at the same time, like Ms. Hadcock says, that we owe it to our citizens. We need to go ahead and do this and move on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Procedure, let me ask a question. Does anyone wish to speak before Alderman Quaker speaks for a second time? If so, please turn on your light. If not, I'm going to go back to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Jason, what was the date of the decision from the Department of Labor?
I don't have that right on the top of my head. I believe it was the day after the last council meeting, which would have been just about 3 weeks ago.
Okay. You know, I think from a process standpoint, this could have been handled differently. We could have convened a special council meeting. We could have discussed it then. We could have had executive sessions after Legal and Finance and Public Works last week. Let me be clear. This particular wording that we're being asked to vote on tonight was presented to us about 45 minutes ago. It is now 11:15 at night. And so I want to make sure everybody understands what imposition of at-will status means. At-will in South Dakota means you can be terminated for any reason or no reason. And so that's a fundamental change. And I think that, you know, as far as imposition of the 0.75, I'm in agreement with that. And I support that. I have serious issues with some of the other management salaries. That's a discussion for another day. But I think that imposition of at-will status is unnecessary hardball, and there were other opportunities to bring the information to the council before tonight, and I think it's unfortunate and unnecessary for this to be handled in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. Jason, out of curiosity, how long have we been in negotiations total with the union at this point?
I don't remember when we had our first bargaining session, but I believe it was in July of 2009.
So we've been going back and forth here, and it's my understanding, for well over a year now.
Yes.
And we've finally reached a point that we have to make a decision.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate Alderman Quaker's concerns, and I do fully understand what an at-will state and status can mean, because, frankly, I've had to deal with that. I've lived in the state most of my life, and I understand how a guy can be doing a good job, but when times get tough, that's it. And it is tough. I understand that. However, and I appreciate our firefighters and the dedication that they serve to the city. But I think we're at a point that we have to make a decision. And unfortunately, as it's been said before, I think it's very clear that none of us really want to be in this position, but our hand has been forced. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson. Let me ask a procedural question. Does anybody wish to speak before Alderwoman Peterson speaks for a second time? If so, please turn on your light. If not, we'll go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Yes, I just wanted to say that even though contractually it's at will, the spirit of the contract is still there, even though it's not the letter of it, because we do support our firefighters and all of our employees of the city, because they do very important work. But that's why I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Jason.
Okay,
The question, Jason, is the city has approximately 737 employees. How many of them are labor employees, labor union employees?
650 roughly.
650.
About that, yeah.
Yeah. So we do have, once they, if this passes and this is imposed, we have a process in place for grievances. that
Absolutely.
Would eliminate anyone just from being fired.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that the spirit of this, as Alderman Peterson had mentioned, or Alderman Mason had mentioned, is that we all appreciate the hard work that any citizens, or I should say any city employee accomplishes for the city of Rapid City. And sometimes the fire department, the police department, these fellows put their lives on the line, I understand. But the problem is that we've been negotiating since July of 2009. That's understandable. There's been plenty of opportunity. They've been to conciliation. The judge has ruled. He's made his ruling. He explained to them at that point in time that these implications may transpire, that there may be not the same contract that they were offered would come forward to them.
Is that correct, Mr. Green?
I believe that's correct. I wasn't involved in that conversation with the conciliator, but he relayed that that conversation had taken place.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And I don't think there's anyone here on the council that would never step back on that spirit of the service that the firemen offer. We have to take in context the entire city, the taxpayers, all the other labor unions, all the other employees in considering these decisions. We can continue to kick the can down the road, ended up in the same situation or maybe a worse situation at this point. There's still room and opportunity to resolve it in a manner. At some point, we just had to draw the line. So I think that weighs in on the decision that's being made tonight. So, and understanding that an at-will employee is not that difficult to deal with when you are working for one of the biggest employers in the city that has a good human resources policy, has a good human resources staff that can handle any situation that may arise in the interim. And I guess I have one more question, Mr. Mayor. Does this in any way, shape, or form deny the firefighters from being involved in their union?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Very good. Further discussion. Motion on the floor is to impose the contract less the deletions. Is that correct, Mr. Green?
Yes.
Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. Do we need a let's do a roll call? Just get it straight on the record, please.
Wah. Brown. Mason. Peterson. Wyffenbach. Davis. Hadcock. Kroger. Quaker.
No.
Motion passes on an 8-2 vote, or 8-1 vote, correct? 8-1, very good. Motion passes. Anything else, Mr. Green?
No, sir.
Very good. Can we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.